Hello, everyone, and welcome to Saturday Night Game Talkie. The Game Huggers here, and I'm so happy if you're watching it live or if you're watching it later on YouTube. The video is up now, I assume, if you're watching it. Oh, good grief. Hold on.
Oh my good, that's my fault.
That's actually me. It is your fault. Okay, good. Hey, so anyway, I wanted to let everybody know that today we have a special guest on. That's actually me. Is that me? Okay, good.
I think it was both of our faults.
All right. So anyway, I wanted to let everybody know that today we have a special. I can hear my own voice. What's going on here? All right. So welcome to the show, Saturday Night Game Talkie. The reason I call it Game Talkie, too, by the way, is I've been reading some Retro Gamer magazine. I don't know if you read a lot of that, but that's a European magazine, and they always say things like talkie and other things like that for talk shows or whatever. Anyway, but we have Chris Alaimo. Is that
Alaimo?
Alaimo. Sorry, I've been practicing that too, and
Really?
At least I didn't say Alaimo because that's what I wanted to say.
That'd be all right too.
From the Classic Gaming Quarterly YouTube channel. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for being a part of the show.
No, thank you very much for inviting me.
So we're here tonight to just kind of discuss a whole bunch of things. We don't necessarily have like these giant, amazing topics to discuss. We just have some things to hang out and talk about. I have a lot of questions I want to ask you. I want to find out a lot of information about how you managed to get 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. I mean, that's gigantic.
Hardly.
Okay. Anyway, so why don't you, if there's anybody out there that is a viewer right now that has not made themselves familiar with your YouTube channel, is there any way that you can give us kind of a little introduction about what you do, what kind of games you play, or even a little bit about your YouTube channel?
I mean, as far as what kind of games I play, I just play all kinds of classic games. I'm just not really that into modern games, so I just still play mostly the same games I played up until I was about 22 or so. I started my YouTube channel a little over 2 years ago. It was in the summer of 2013. And I think probably most people fall into this. When I started my YouTube channel, I really didn't know what I was doing or why I was making YouTube videos. And I think even with some of the more popular YouTube channels, if you go back and you go to their videos and sort them like oldest to newest, and you look at like their first 10 videos, it just looks like somebody threw up on it, And I think certainly mine are the same way because I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, really, honestly, my first couple videos were just me trying to do my version of Classic Game Room. So it definitely took a while for me to sort of find my channel's voice. But now I think I have that. And so if I were going to try to describe my channel to somebody who is a consumer of YouTube content but has never heard of me, I would say that maybe it's a three-way cross between Classic Game Room, GameSack, and the Video Game Historian.
And that's actually really funny that you mentioned that because I have gone back and I've looked at a lot of like YouTube channels that have been around for a while. I know that like GameSack, Joe Redifer has been on YouTube for years. Like he hasn't only had just the GameSack channel. He's had there's like a Joe Redifer YouTube channel, and there's also like Joe Red Other YouTube channel.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
no problem. And those are like, sometimes they're game related videos, but sometimes they're also not. So it's really weird seeing it. But I've always noticed that he's been incredibly creative with his skills in editing. His editing is really impressive. I actually have been a fan of his like long before GameSack ever came around. But yeah, your videos are really, really good. I love the quality. I love the style. And I think that you have to put in a lot of like almost investigation like into these things because you give a lot of stats and you give a lot of like actual information, whereas there's so many YouTubers that just sit and talk and they give their opinions like, oh, I love this game. I remember the third Christmas of whatever, and it's really cool to see that. I compare your YouTube channel to like, is it the Gaming Historian, where he kind of goes through and he does like in 1998, NEC and Hudson came together to whatever, like this huge. And I really like that. I appreciate that. That's really cool.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
No,
I was actually kind of worried. Like people probably won't believe me when I say this, but I actually didn't watch my first Gaming Historian video until after I had started doing like my retrospective style videos, and then I watched one of his and realized that I was, at least like the first part of my videos are basically like what he's doing. And I was kind of worried when I saw that people would think I was just trying to be like the next video game historian, which I wasn't.
Right. That's really crazy. That's awesome. So, okay, your YouTube channel, you have a good YouTube channel, but what is coming up next for your channel? I mean, what games are you like putting together videos for right now?
Well, so anybody who is a regular viewer of my channel knows that I have not uploaded a video now in a month, which makes me a little bit sad. My last video was, well, 2 videos ago I did the Sega Genesis in 1989, which was it was about a 30-minute video, and it was meant as a follow-up to the Sega Genesis launch spectacular video. And while I was making that video and seeing how long it took to make it, I had this idea, like, how could I go back and make shorter videos like my old videos were, with the production quality that I at least try to have with my newer videos, so that I could upload more regularly. And so the idea that I came up with, which is what the last video I uploaded was to do this CGQ quick hits series, where I kind of gave myself this limitation of 5 minutes. Like, I even cut the intro down so that instead of 10 seconds, it's like 3 seconds or something. Nice. And the idea was that I would release 3 of those after every like retrospective video. So, and they were supposed to be like tied in. So I did the Sega Genesis in 1989. And so one of those games was Ghouls and Ghosts. And so the follow-up quick hits video, the first one, was Ghosts and Goblins, which got a brief mention in the episode. And then the next one, which is unfortunately still on my computer, is Shinobi for the Master System, because I, of course, talked about Revenge of Shinobi.
Right,
and
right.
Of course, the original idea was that I was going to upload those videos once a week, but I unfortunately haven't gotten around to uploading the next one. I don't do YouTube as a full-time job or anything.
Right, right. It's often really hard to find time just to do it.
Yeah. But so maybe also, just to better answer your question, the next retrospective episode that will be coming out, and I'm not going to say when because I have no idea, is going to be the Sega Saturn launch spectacular.
Oh, awesome.
Which has been heavily requested,
Very
which is
cool.
why I made the TurboGrafx launch spectacular. And I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about my channel having a voice. You know, I think anybody who wants to have a YouTube channel, you have to have like your thing. Like, what's your thing that separates you from everybody else? And sometimes you just have to like figure it out. You know, like, I didn't intend necessarily for my channel to be what it is now. I'm very happy with it, but it's just sort of happened organically, where I made that Sega Genesis launch video only because my friend and I were talking so much about the Sega Genesis launch a year and a half ago, and we were actually going to do a podcast episode about it. And I just thought, wow, that'd be such a cool idea for an episode. And at the time, I didn't think it would be any more popular than any other episode, but it just sort of took off. And in the comments, people were saying like, oh, now, do this one next or do that one next, And so I did the PlayStation, and people were asking for the TurboGrafx, and I did that one. And the other big one people are asking for is the Sega Saturn, which I think will be really cool, because the story of the launch of the Sega Saturn, at least here in the US, is a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen a whole lot of other people do like launch specials or anything like that when a console came out, what all of the titles that they actually had come out with on launch day, or even like a couple weeks later. Those are really cool. That's a really unique idea. I love that. Those are really fun videos for sure. I think that's how I initially discovered you also online, or on YouTube, was the TurboGrafx launch special. And then of course I watched the Turbo one, and then the Genesis one, and I think there's a PlayStation one.
Yeah.
And then is there one other one that I'm missing? I can't remember.
Not launch, no.
Okay, cool. No. Awesome.
And then just sort of to continue on that a little bit, sure. So the idea is eventually there should be like a launch show on my channel for every console, or every classic console, or what I consider to be a classic console. And then sort of, you saw the Sega Genesis in 1989 episode. Maybe you haven't seen it yet, but there is one.
Yep.
The idea is to keep doing that with all the other consoles, So like I did the TurboGrafx launch, and then later I could do, well, here's the rest of 1989 for the TurboGrafx.
Very cool.
Continue through its entire life.
Nice. That's awesome. I like that a lot. So, okay. I had a good question, and then it just flopped out of my head, of course.
You got me excited.
Okay, before we just start jumping through like all these other things about what you enjoy or whatever, what would be, have you bought, or how many retro consoles have you got? And I know the word retro is like, I don't know, what does that even mean now? I don't even understand it hardly myself, but like, which ones were you there for the launch of? Like what was like the first one? I mean, if you're gonna do a whole list of these, which ones did you actually experience in real life, and which ones would be just ones that you would have to like do some research on?
I mean, the console I would say I have the sort of the strongest connection with the launch would actually be the Game Boy, because it's the only classic or retro console that I actually got basically right when it came out. I got the Game Boy. I had the Game Boy by the first Christmas. In fact, I got it for Christmas in the first Christmas when there was little else out with the launch titles. So just for that reason, I'm looking forward to doing that one. And then, I remember the launch of the PlayStation pretty vividly because I was already out of high school and working, and actually all my coworkers were buying PlayStations at launch, but I just couldn't see spending that kind of money on, at the time that was a ridiculous amount of money to spend.
Right.
I thought, adjusted for inflation, $300 in 1995 was a lot of money. I made minimum wage in my first job out of high school, and in 1995 minimum wage was $4.25 an hour. And I had calculated how many hours I would have to work to buy a PlayStation plus a game plus a memory card. And I wanted to try to find a way to fit it into my PlayStation launch episode, but I didn't really have one. But I mean, it was like 2.5 weeks of solid, full-time work just to buy a video game console. So, I couldn't really do that.
That is awesome. So during that time, did you already have a Saturn, or were you like looking to jump into that generation via the PlayStation?
No, I had a Nintendo when I was a kid. I got a Nintendo when I was 10, and that was in 87. And then I got a Game Boy in 89. But then in 1990, my mom bought me a computer, like a PC clone computer. And for like the next 5 years, I was really primarily a PC gamer.
Okay.
So I got a Genesis in like 1992, but I really got it because I wanted to play Sonic the Hedgehog. And we played a few other games, like I mentioned I had a Golden Axe episode where I mentioned my friend and I, playing the crap out of that game because he had a Genesis too, but like me, he was also primarily a PC gamer. So really, I think what made me buy a PlayStation was that by 1997 there were no PC games coming out that I could play on my PC, and so I had to get something or I wasn't going to be playing video games anymore.
Yeah. I as far as computers go, I was always several generations behind, either as like a young adult or, well, even now. All my computers that I have now are just older computers, and I usually wind up booting up Linux on them all and seeing what games I can play on Steam.
Yeah.
Via Linux distro, because it's cheap and I can run a 6-year-old laptop on it still today, and things seem to run pretty well. Yeah, that's cool. I don't know if I've ever gotten, the only system I ever got on a launch day that I have my actual own experience with is the Nintendo Wii. Oh, no, that's not true. The Nintendo Wii and the Sega Dreamcast. I was in line on September 9th, 1999 to get a Dreamcast that day. And that was an amazing experience. I remember getting in line at a GameStop, which was actually a Software Etc. at the time, so that's not so bad. And I came home that day with a Dreamcast, an extra controller, and Sonic Adventure, NFL 2K, and Soul Calibur. And that was just, I don't think I slept for like 24 hours straight. It was just like one of the best launch day experiences of my life. And then in 2006, so just 7 years later, yeah, it was 2006 was the Wii launch, and I remember coming home that launch with, and that was like they didn't do pre-orders at a big box store, a local big box store, and they just had people lining up, and I was like number 18 out of like 40, and we waited like half a day in line outside in the cold, and I came home with the Wii, and I believe that came with a nunchuck and a Wiimote, and then of course Wii Sports, and then Zelda, the Twilight Princess at the time, which was also a very good experience too. It was just kind of not as exciting. I was also older, so I was more of an adult and I had more responsibilities, so I couldn't exactly marathon like this huge like launch day fun party thing or whatever like I did with the Dreamcast. But those are both good experiences and I had a lot of fun with that. But I have never ever outside of those two gotten a console at launch or anything like that. I was
the only game I ever the only game I get that way too. The only system I ever bought on launch day was a PlayStation 2. And it's funny because I was going to ask you, did you have a PlayStation before you got a Dreamcast?
You know, yes, I did, but I definitely didn't have a PlayStation before I had a Saturn though. I went with Saturn during that whole like console war or whatever. And I waited until I think the holiday season of '96 to make a decision on that. The N64 had just been released, and there was like a lot of games I was interested in. I was interested in the Mario 64 and I think Pilot Wings 64, and those looked really fun. But the price of it I think was $249 for the system, and then each game was like $59 or something like that. And the Saturn had a price drop, and I had like $250 on me or whatever, and I just said, you know what, I remember being in a Kmart of all stores, and I was there, and they had Saturns for $199 with now I'm hearing an echo again. with Virtua Fighter, Daytona, and Virtua Cop. And then like they had this big clearance rack of all these games that were $9.99 or $19.99. So it was just awesome. But then I had a PlayStation a few years later. I want to say like 98 or something like that.
Yeah. I was only asking because you know, during the 16-bit console wars, I was more, you know, I had a Genesis. I didn't have a Super Nintendo, right? So I was a Genesis guy. But then when I got the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, I just fell in love with it and just became kind of a Sony person. And then, of course, you know, I kind of saw the Saturn and, you know, it wasn't really doing well here. And so when the Dreamcast came out, I wanted like nothing to do with it. Like, you know, I think part of it was maybe I was a little bit like jealous or worried because the Dreamcast did look pretty good, but you know, I was just like, no, forget that thing. I don't want it. Like a friend of a friend got it and brought it over. And I was like, you know, forget that thing. And because I was waiting for the PlayStation 2. And so when the PlayStation 2 was launched, I went and got in line at a Best Buy and had to wait all night. I was number 7 in line though. So I got a PlayStation 2. And then I got one game with it. I got SSX, you know, and I brought it home and I played SSX and like, yeah, this is cool. And then I just used it as a DVD player and used it to play PS1 games because like no good games came out for the PS2 for just months and months and months. But, you know, like you were saying, you know, you got your Dreamcast, and even just among the launch lineup of Dreamcast games, there were a bunch of good games to play, you know? So, you know, I should have gotten my head on my butt and bought a Dreamcast back then, but.
So you were in line for a PS2. You were one of the, you were one of the reasons why the Dreamcast failed. So so short because everybody jumped on that PlayStation hype.
Yeah, and I did buy a Dreamcast, but not until it was on clearance.
Hey, do you hear an echo when I speak? Or am I?
No.
You don't hear anything? I hear it. I don't know what's going on.
Are you sure you don't have the YouTube feed like open on your computer?
I don't, but let me.
Because I like closed all the other tabs on my browser to make sure that I wasn't, you know, creating like a feedback loop.
Let me check real quick here. Well, we have this moment of silence.
Yes.
How about we discuss a couple of other things that we were talking about?
Okay.
I know that we had talked earlier about game consoles or games that we might have gotten rid of at some point.
Yes.
And if you're recollecting the games again, or you're looking for one of those games that you lost in your collection so many years ago or whatever, which would be something that you sold off or something that you've traded away or whatever that you're now actively looking for again?
Yeah. So I was thinking about that because you had mentioned previously that you had to sell off a bunch of your games. I sold off a huge portion of my collection in like 2007 or so, actually to buy my wife an engagement ring. So I thought it was like a good, I'm going to sell these games I don't want and, buy my wife a nice ring. So I don't regret it at all. But from that, I was very lucky that I was able to rebuy everything that I got rid of that I ended up wanting back. Like I got rid of stuff that I still don't miss, like a ColecoVision. Like with apologies to the ColecoVision fans out there, I'm not saying it's not a cool console, because it is. It's just
right.
There's really nothing for me on that console that I can't play somewhere else. And also I hate the controllers. So sorry. But I mean, the ColecoVision's cool. I just don't want it. So I got rid of it, and I'm like fine with that. But like I also sold off my entire TurboGrafx collection at that time.
Wow.
And I got very lucky that I was able to basically buy it all back. Not literally the games that I sold, but I was able to get back everything that I had gotten rid of and more before the market got crazy.
Oh,
and
wow.
I don't really want to like name names here or anything, but probably the first wave of games I bought like a huge chunk of games from somebody who's very notorious on the PC Engine forums for his buying and selling practices. And this was before all that stuff happened. But I mean, he basically sold for like a little over $100. I got like a whole box load of games, some of which were still sealed.
Wow.
So I was pretty lucky to get that back. But so to answer your question though, the one thing that I've sold, and I don't regret selling it, but I had a Vectrex with a bunch of games and overlays. And
wow.
I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but like I mentioned earlier, how I was a big PC gamer when I was a teenager.
Yep.
And my friend and I, my friend who was also the PC gamer, and I, when it came time to buy a sound card, when sound cards became like a thing that if you didn't have it, you couldn't really enjoy games anymore.
Right.
We both bought Gravis ultrasound cards, which were, everybody else was buying sound blasters, but we had to get ultrasounds because they were cooler, which they were cooler, and I still believe that. But
yeah.
At some point years later, my ultrasound broke, and I just threw it in the garbage. And I've been thinking for a long time that I really want, I want to get an ultrasound again, but they're pretty rare because they just didn't make as many of them because Sound Blaster was the thing to have.
Yep.
And I found this guy in Germany, actually, who had an ultrasound that was still like complete in the box and came with everything that ever came with it. And it was even the exact revision of ultrasound that I had. And he wanted kind of a lot of money for it, but to go find a complete in-box ultrasound, like I've still never seen another one pop up on the market. But he kind of wanted a lot of money for it, and so in order to fund it without like dipping into my savings, which I didn't want to do, I sold my entire Vectrex collection. And that was probably also in around like 2007, 2008. And to this day, I still don't have a Vectrex again. And so if I had to name one thing that's still like my white whale of retro gaming stuff, it's that I still want a Vectrex really bad.
Okay. Wow. I've never ever owned a Vectrex. I've seen them like at game conventions and like at other people's places or whatever, but I've never actually ever owned one of those. Yeah, I actually wound up selling off everything of my own in around 2008. I had issues coming up with some bills and we wanted to get ahead on a few things, so I wound up selling off everything I had. So all my Turbo stuff, Sega, Super Nintendo, NES, all the way down the whole thing, all the way to like extras and weird like little like the Lords of Thunder VHS tape, stuff like that. I sold like everything I had to try to get ahead on some things and some bills. And that was in gosh, that was like okay, that was in March or April of 2008. And it's really jumping between us. The camera's going crazy.
I'm trying to stay quiet while you're talking specifically.
So anyway, it's interesting to hear people or to think of the way I felt after I did all that, because when we sold off all those things, I didn't necessarily think like, oh my God, like part of me is dying, or like these things that I swore I would be buried with are now gone, and like I'm giving away my children or anything. It was kind of like almost like a liberation. Like it was kind of this thing where it's like, oh, I don't have all this stuff anymore. I don't have all these things that are just like weighing me down. It's kind of like if I want to play games, and the way that I did it for a long time after that, for almost 2 years, was just emulation. I had an Xbox, and we put a 60 gig hard drive in it, and I emulated everything that I had, at least most of the stuff, other than like Saturn and some like GameCube games and things like that. But I wound up doing the emulation route for a long time, and I think that when you want to have a physical copy is like the weirdest thing, because you can do emulation, you can do like digital versions of everything, and there's just such a weird feeling of like having a copy, being able to look at a shelf with a bunch of games on it and just load a game and look back and say, you know what, I play this a long time. I need to put some time in it. Pull out the instruction manual, look through it, things like that. That it just aren't. You just can't do it with digital copies. You can't sit here and go through a menu with all these names of games and get that same experience. It's a weird feeling, like getting the feeling that real controller in your hand of like a specific type. Like you grab an Atari Jaguar and you're like, wow, I really do hate this controller. Like, but I'm going to tough it out and try to play this game anyway. Or the Super Nintendo controller that's very comfy. There it is. You don't have the 6-button one? Oh, nice.
And we didn't plan that. But, it was just happened to be on the floor right there.
A few years later, around late 2009 or early 2010, I just started to things started falling in my lap all of a sudden out of nowhere. I started to sign up. No, I mentioned that I was thinking about getting back into TurboGrafx again, because I couldn't believe that I sold my collection. I had everything except for Magical Chase. I never, ever owned a Magical Chase. But I had Dynastic Hero, I had Dungeon Explorer 2, Beyond Shadowgate, Might Magic 3, Super Air Zonk, Ball 3 CD. Like, I had all of those games. Like, I wound up buying pretty much everything that TZD had. From the Super CD and CD line, anything that they had, I wound up having them, because they wound up got it towards the end. They were like doing super sales of games. It was like three for $100 for those super CDs, and that was like Lords of Thunder, Beyond Shadowgate, and Dynastic Hero or something. So I wound up selling all of those. And that's something that I would love to get again, but I would love to get them at like $3 for $100, like that kind of price or something. So I don't own Dynastic Hero or Dungeon Explorer 2. But like I said a little bit ago about how it kind of just started falling in my lap. Someone mentioned to me, it was probably on PC Engine on the chat or something, and I'd mentioned like, man, I could really I wouldn't mind getting it because it's silly, but I have all these emulators and I can play them on an Xbox, but it's just, it's not the same. It's been a while. I'd love to have some cue cards again. And someone mentioned somebody on Atari was selling them TurboGrafx and TurboGrafx CDs, and apparently they had issues, like they didn't get afters or something. I don't remember what it was. But I found the thread on Atari Age, and he was selling a TurboGrafx for $20. And I said, okay, I'll buy a TurboGrafx for $20. I got it. He wound up actually being a guy who comes to the Midwest Gaming Classic every year in Milwaukee, and so we just met, and he gave it to me there, and I gave him the $20, and done. And then a few weeks later, I found a TurboGrafx CD that had issues. It wasn't working right. Like the lens wasn't reading discs properly or something like that. And that was another $25, $30, and it came with everything, everything, all the connections and everything, including a CD-ROM one or whatever, the card that you need for the discs. And then a little bit after that, a forum member named Blue BMW, he was interested in that setup that I had, because he's a tinkerer. He likes to fix things. He was going to work on the CD and fix that part. And we wound up doing a trade for a Turbo Duo. So I gave him everything and I had a Duo again. And I threw in a few other things too, but then things just kept falling in, and I wound up finding a Sega CD on like a garage sale, and then a Jaguar. Okay, so I found a friend who had an Atari Jaguar like years ago, like 7-8 years ago, and he was saying how he really would like to get an N64. And I said, why would you want an N64? He's like, because there's all these multiplayer games. And I said, would you want to trade one for the Atari Jaguar? And he's like, sure. And I wound up going to a pawn store, finding the N64 for like $15 or less, or I don't remember how much it was, but I just kept having like that. And now here I am with all these games and all these systems and stuff. And like I haven't had to break the bank to get back into it again. It's been awesome. It's been really cool. It's kind of fun in a way to like, and I mentioned this on the forums when someone was talking about wanting to sell, everything, or how it felt liberating to like get rid of all these things that were weighing down. And I had said that it feels a little bit like catch and release. Like you spend 10, 15 years to collect all this stuff, and then you just give it back to the community and say, okay, I'm going to do it all over again, but this time I'm not going to spend more than $20 a game, or, some kind of fun little like idea or whatever. And I'm actually having a much better time this time around, like just being patient and just picking up things when I can, or when I find good enough deals, or if it's, a big trade where I have something that I found in a pawn store, which is very recent. I found a boxed Kickmaster for the NES, mint, like a beautiful, beautiful, perfect copy, and I wound up trading it with a guy for I think it was like a Saturn controller and a whole bunch of Super Famicom games and a couple other things, because apparently that game is worth a ton of money. So I don't care. I played it. I don't like it. It's not very fun, and I value it about as much as I traded it to him for. So it's really awesome to be able to do it this way around and just not do anything crazy. The only crazy thing that I did was I wound up selling a whole bunch of games on eBay to rack up a bunch of PayPal credit to then give to a guy on the forums $150 for a copy of Beyond Shadowgate with poster. So that was a game that I felt would be the one game that I would spend a chunk of money on, and it is. And I always will say, I don't think any video game in the world is worth $150. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. As a collector or an investment, I guess, whatever. I don't see myself ever doing it again. Well, actually, that's not true. I did do the Kickstarter. I kickstarted $300 for Shenmue 3. So, yeah, but it's a really cool, like, super signed all these manuals and anyway, we could chat about that later. But I don't see ever paying that much for a game again. But Beyond Shadowgate was just something that I had this nostalgic like attachment to, that I've always said is one of my favorite games ever, and it's definitely like top 3 favorite games for the Turbo. So that was the only one that I've spent a ton of money on. And the only thing that would be like left on my to-do list of things that I used to have that I don't have anymore would be a Neo Geo AES system. I don't have one of those, and I know that's pricey, and it can get really expensive. But that's something I'm on the lookout for. I'm always watching out for that. So
you have the CD though. Neo Geo CD. I mean, aside from the loading times, you can play all the games. So.
That is true. I have the CD and an MVS.
Oh, you have an MVS?
Yep.
Yeah, then I don't, if you want an AES, like, who am I to tell you, but that's what I have. I have an MVS, and like, I'm just happy. I had a CD, and I have my MVS, and I have a multi-cart, and I have a whole pile of legitimate carts, and I'm totally satisfied. So, but if I never had an AES. To me, the AES was when I went to Toys R Us when I was a kid, and it was like behind the glass so that you couldn't even touch it. you know?
Sure.
So other than that, like I don't have any attachment to AES. But just going back to what you're saying about sort of your sort of style now of collecting, if you want to call it that, or just your style of picking up games. Like I think that's like the only smart way to do it these days. You know, when I started, I never really started collecting. I can't even really say that. Like I just always bought old games, and I never thought of it as collecting. It was just like I wanted to play old video games, and it was like other people's trash.
Yep.
That I was taking in. But you know, now that it's become so popular and the prices have gone up, you know, you just have to do like what you said. You know, if you just kind of wait and you're just patient, there'll be deals on the forums, or they can, you know, you can snipe something on eBay or find something on Craigslist, and you just got to not play the game that all these people are, you know, who have plenty of money and not enough sense and are willing to overpay for a game just because they want it right now, you know?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I think that was what I did. Gosh, starting in like 96 or 97 when I got my first credit card. Or no, that was like 98. Anyway, late 90s when I got my first credit card, and I was very foolish, and I knew that I had to have all these rare games, and I wound up, I think I paid $200 for a copy of Dracula X. I paid like $70 for Fatal Fury Special Super CD, or no, the arcade card CD off of TZD, and it was just stupid stuff like that I spent a lot of money on a lot of crap, and then I had it, which is like was great because that's what I wanted. That was my goal to have them. Now I couldn't imagine doing something that foolish. At least to me.
No, it is. I mean, I can't. I could give you examples, like non-gaming examples. You know, I got my first credit card in like 1995, and I just bought all kinds of stupid crap with it. So,
yep.
I think a lot of people do that. You know, it's like a live and learn. You know, like now we're older and we're wiser, and you know, we don't do stupid stuff like that. So
now we just do different stupid stuff.
Oh yeah.
So okay. I noticed that you'd mentioned like you're not really a collector. You just happen to have a lot of games. Like, so it's almost like you're building like your own game library. And how do you differentiate that from people that are specifically collectors? Like they're, oh, I don't have Magical Dinosaur Tour, but I know I need it. Got to sit on my shelf. Or whatever, you know, random Sega CD game that nobody wants or nobody's ever going to play, but they have to have it to have the complete set. It's crazy because I don't consider myself a collector at all. But anytime I have people over, they'll look at my games and just say, "Wow, this is an amazing collection."
Yeah, I feel like with a lot of like the old guard of retro gaming people, it's almost like collection and collector have turned into like 4-letter words.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be associated with people like this new generation of collectors. You know, I never used to consider myself really a collector, but at the same time, like I'll refer to my stuff as like a collection because I mean that's kind of what it is.
Right.
The reason I kind of originally had that as a talking point was because I specifically noticed that when I was talking to you the other day, you referred to your game library instead of your game collection, and it kind of just got me thinking. Like what makes your we don't want to say your collection, but you know, what makes your personal stash of games a library versus a collection, you know? And it's certainly like a blurry line, and different people are going to have different definitions of that. For me, like I know I own games that I'm never going to play and maybe don't even really intend on playing, but at the same time, like I have that game for a reason, and that reason isn't because it's filling a hole. Like I don't want a complete collection of anything, but you know, maybe there's a game where I just think that it has historical significance, or sure. I just really like the cover art, or just for whatever reason, you know, like for instance, after I did my Genesis launch show, I really wanted to have a complete set of Genesis launch titles. I mean, it's only 6 titles, and I already had 3 of them. And so I just felt like it'd be cool to go get the other 3 and just have a complete launch set. But the problem is like 2 of those games are, at least in my opinion, ass. and so I know I'm never going to play it. But then does that make it a collection? Because then that's like a little mini collection of Genesis launch games, you know? So like,
yeah.
So I didn't do that. I don't have those 6 games. I have the 4 that I think are good, and I didn't get the other 2, but I had like this knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, I have to get the other 2, you know, and I didn't do it. And I still have that happen. Like the latest thing, I'm kind of a fan of Accolade games on the Genesis. If you remember Accolade, they were like the first company that tried to make Genesis games that were unlicensed and get away with it, and Sega sued them. And so I just think Accolade's cool. And when I was a teenager, I had Turrican for the Genesis, and I thought that game was really sweet.
Nice.
And for anybody who doesn't know, that the Accolade games come in a cardboard box, and the cartridge shells look totally different. And so it had occurred to me like, oh, it would be cool to have a complete set of Accolade games. You know, but then I thought more about it, and it's like, well, why? You know, like there are certain Accolade games in the Genesis that I think are really cool, like Turrican and Universal Soldier, which is really just Turrican 2. And I don't know what else I have over there. Star Control, Super Off-Road, and so just get those, and that way you can have some Accolade games on your shelf, but they're going to be games that you're actually going to enjoy. And so that's kind of what I try to do with all of my games is if I have a game, it's either because I like to play it, I intend to play it, or for some other reason it's personally significant to me. And so for me, when you talk about a collection, at least from the perspective of what people say now when they want to say like, oh, you know, collection is bad or collector is bad, it's when you have to have a game just because, well, I want a complete set of Nintendo games, or I want a complete set of Genesis games, and that's like a mentality that I don't have a problem with it, because like, do whatever you want, but I don't understand it, you know. Like, again, I don't really want to name names, but you know, there's a famous YouTuber who has a complete set of Nintendo games that's sort of the backdrop for his videos.
Sure.
And I like him, I like his videos, I think he's a cool guy. I don't understand why he has to have those games, you know, because there are games that A, you're never going to play, B, are totally forgettable and have no significance, and therefore C, are just taking up room on your shelf and could be sold, so you could take that money and buy something else.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I think my game library is something that is constantly changing all the time, because I have like games that I will take, and then if I'm not going to play them, I'll trade them away, or games that someone else is really interested in, and I like them, but I'm not in love with them. I'll trade them away or sell them or whatever, constantly, all the time. I actually tried to keep like a spreadsheet of all my games together, and after like not updating it for 3 months, I just don't ever use it anymore, because it's pointless to, because it's so out of date. I had games where I'm looking at it like, wait, I don't own this anymore, or I do own this, or whatever. So my value on most times, I mean, there are a lot of games that I love to have just because, you know, like you said, I love the cover art, or like I love the music in the game, or something like that. Like, the soundtrack is like something I really, really, really love. Things like that I'll keep, and I know I probably won't pop it in, you know, all year, or longer. But for the most part, I think that the games that I have on the shelf are games that I'm going to play eventually. And I don't try to stick to just collecting one style, or just like collecting, you know, one console or anything. It's kind of like this is if it's at a thrift store, unless it's something absolutely useless, like a sports title of, you know, George Foreman KO boxing on the Super Nintendo or something, I'll probably pick it up just because it's a couple of dollars here and there and whatever. And especially if it's more complete versions of it, then I can use it for whatever. People trade bait, things like that for other things. But I wind up doing quite a bit of like buying and selling and trading online, not so much through eBay anymore, but through like some of the other channels, like Facebook groups, forums, things like that. spend a good chunk of time on them, trading with people. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I would consider what I have in my basement as a library. A collection would be like, I don't know. I mean, like a lot of books are a library. You borrow them to friends. You read them when you're interested in them. You can I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know what I collect. I don't know. Maybe I do collect. I'm really in denial. I have no idea. But I feel like it's just a library of things, and there are a few that I value far more than the rest of them, but for the most part, they're for whatever. And I do like help out with a lot of like game conventions and things like that. Local ones. There's one that I run in September, just last month that we had. Where I'm pretty much in charge of it. I'm trying to start a retro event in the area, just like having parents bring their kids in and their kids the games I played when I was a kid, and whatever else. So we have this last month we had 40 game consoles on TV set up, and it was all my job. It was just a whole bunch of systems. I'd say actually like 34 of them were mine. The rest were other systems brought in. But it was just an awesome time, and it was a lot of fun, and it was really cool to get all that stuff that, had I been a collector and just kind of left things boxed up or things sitting on shelves, they would just continue to do that, and their capacitors and their batteries or whatever would rotting inside of them, but now they're getting played, and this is something that I try to do, and try to get involved in as many game shows as I can throughout the year. So like in March or April, I help out at the House Classic. In January, we have a smaller show. It's local. It's called EverCon. And there's also mine in September, and there's a video game summit in Chicago that's in July. I try to bring more things to that. And we actually, just later this month, there's going to be a small get-together, and that's a yearly thing called Talking Turbo Fest. That's somewhere in Chicago. That's another thing. There's many people that we can get together and just try to get our stuff out, play our games, and do whatever. So they get used, and these games that are super rare and super hard to find. The manuals are a little beat up. Boxes aren't in the best shape. Sometimes my kids get into them and they're playing with them, and they might rip an instruction manual. Oh my gosh! Like, what are you gonna do? This is just the way it is. And I rather it be used and up and fully enjoy it, as opposed to being stuck in like a VGA box and graded 89% or whatever the hell it. That's like the biggest scam of the century. But I mean, that's just my personal feeling on it. I'm more in tune with the library concept as opposed to being a collector.
So are you saying you don't own any VGA graded games?
I don't. Wait. No, I don't actually.
That was a sarcastic question. So I don't either. I've never owned one or even held one. So.
Wow. I'd say I guess you're missing out. I don't know, but.
I do have. I don't know if you remember the starting lineup figures from when we were kids.
Sure.
I have 2 of those that are inside of plexiglass holders, but only because I bought them that way, and they were like a couple bucks a piece, and they were players I liked. But they're not great.
Those are things that you collect.
I guess I just found them at a store for cheap and thought they were cool. So I mean, if I had found them without the plexiglass boxes, I certainly would not have put them in plexiglass boxes.
Okay, I just got 2 messages on the feed that I'm getting a crazy amount of echo whenever I talk. Is there other than your earbud, is there any other sound coming out, like a speaker?
Nope.
Not when I talk, I mean?
No.
Like nothing else. I don't know what's going on then. Because I have myself muted. And so whenever I talk, it echoes really bad. Like I don't know what's going on.
Maybe you should just mute yourself and you should just write down questions and hold them up to the camera.
That's what I'm gonna do. That's perfect. I love it.
All right.
What's the name of the beer you're drinking there?
This is the gold. I'm up to the gold mine now.
Nice.
270 for a 6-pack at Whole Foods. So next time someone tells you you can't afford to shop at Whole Foods, you remind them of Gold Mine.
Nice. All right, let me see if I can figure out what this echo is. I don't think there's any other speaker going on here. I got it on mute here.
I can hear the echo too, I should say.
You can.
When you talk, yeah.
A little bit afterwards. If I talk really quiet. No, that sounds nice.
It's not that bad, but if you got people complaining, then that's a problem.
Well, yeah, there's a couple people that said it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Oh crap! Now I can't hear you. Now it's horrible.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Can you try pulling out your microphone or your headphones?
Sure. All right, I'm pulling them out now.
All right. Can you hear my echo now?
Well, I can't really hear you that well. Let me turn up the volume here.
All right.
Now, oh, that's just way too loud.
Can you hear my echo now?
Talk some more.
Hello, this is Joshua, and we're here at the Google Hangouts Fun event.
Maybe.
I only hear myself now. I don't hear the echo, but can you hear my voice at all?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you just fine. Because, well, now you're coming out of my speakers, you know.
Oh, well, what the hell? That doesn't make any sense.
No.
Okay, well, I can't hear my echo anymore. Is that better? Anybody want to tweet me or whatever? Only when I talk. Chris, you sound great. I'm an idiot, apparently.
Oh, making a jump in logic.
My echo anymore. Is that better? Oh, he said the echo's gone. All right, awesome. And yes, I didn't want to mention names because of I don't know if this is like some kind of a thing that people are going to be watching or whatever. But the guy I traded Kickmaster to was Chris at Windy Games, who's an awesome guy. Great person.
Awesome guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, with the whole idea of libraries versus collectors, we're both kind of in the same boat where we're saying like we have libraries. We're not like collecting it. We're not like grading it or anything like that. And you had mentioned
anyway. So
what was that?
That I consider what I have a library, but somebody else would say it's a collection. You know,
sure.
Like you said earlier, maybe I'm in denial. I would just say that you could come in my house and point to any game on the shelf, and I could tell you why I have it.
Exactly. Right. So, okay, if you have a library or a collection of retro games, what defines retro to you?
Yeah, okay, so I actually really hate that question because I see it. Well, no, not that you asked it, but the thing is the way you said it. See, you said what defines retro to me, which is a valid question.
Sure.
I often see on the forums, or especially on Reddit, and I do love Reddit, but I'm very active on the retro gaming subreddits, and there's, you know, you get all kinds there. But so many people are looking for like a hard definition of what is retro. Like, where do you draw the line and say this is retro and that's not retro? And anytime somebody asks that, a bunch of people will all come and say what, in their opinion, the definition should be. Not what their definition is, but what the definition should be.
Yep.
And the problem with that is that it varies from person to person. And to me, it depends on how old you are. And whenever I say that on Reddit, I get downvoted because I think that a lot of these younger, like 20-something collectors are really sensitive to you bringing up their age because they're used to having guys my age look down on them for collecting video games when they're not old enough to remember those games. And I'm not doing that at all. It's just,
right.
If you were in your 20s, then maybe when you were a kid, you were playing the PlayStation 2. And so maybe you look back on that now, and to you, the PlayStation 2 is retro. To me, the PlayStation 2 is not at all retro
right?
Because I was like an adult, like to me, like I think it ties into like nostalgia and like what systems do you feel nostalgic about? And that I think is what is retro to you. So like for me, it kind of gets cut off at the PlayStation and the Saturn. Like for me, those are like retro consoles because like I was like a teenager or I was just like a stupid 20-year-old and like I wasn't like an adult. And to me, they still feel like they're sort of from my childhood or from like the first half of my life. Whereas other things are not retro. But that's just me. So you could go on like the Atari Age forums where there are a lot of people who are in their 40s or even 50s on there who were maybe even adults when the Atari came out. And to them, even a Nintendo is not retro.
Right.
Because it's all based on their frame of reference. So that's why I said what I said. I hate that question because what is retro is very personal. And when somebody tries to like have a definition and then force that definition on somebody else, like if somebody says like, oh yeah, I'm really into retro gaming, I've been collecting Nintendo 64 cartridges, and then somebody else comes along and says, well, that's not retro. Well, who are you to say what is or isn't retro to that other person? So that's my take. I don't know, you agree or how do you feel?
That is, like you hit it on the head right there. I think that's exactly how I feel, or at least maybe if I didn't feel that way, now I do because it makes so much sense. But like, I know I've been guilty of when someone jumps up and says like, oh, I love retro games, and they're talking about like one of their favorite games growing up as a kid is Baldur's Gate 2. And I'm like, wow, that was like 10 years ago. And the kid's 18. He's 18, so of course, yeah, 10 years ago he was 8. So yeah, that was retro to him. So like, it's just totally the same thing as when I was 18 talking about the NES or like the Atari 7800 or something.
When I was 18, 8 seemed like forever ago.
Right?
And now I'm 38, and 28 seems like it was last week. So.
Yeah, you'll have to do another a 38-year-old reacts to the Neo Geo Pocket video now.
Right, I have to update that. That got a lot of. We don't have downvotes on YouTube, but you can get the thumbs down. I got a lot. I got a lot of thumbs down, but I'm not. I thought that was pretty funny.
I thought it was funny too. It was entertaining. It's like, this is pretty cool. Like,
yeah,
that's awesome. It's very funny. No, I feel the same way. I think that sometimes I hear different opinions that make sense, and then I hear this opinion that makes sense. So, the whole word retro means different things to different people. And PlayStation 2, to me, does not feel at all, retro. However, that was 2 generations ago. I think, like, a lot of it, too, is what kind of games are we playing now versus what kind of games were we playing then. I almost feel that the PlayStation 2 is like almost a slightly less resolution version of the PS3 and the PS4. Like it's not like there was this giant generation gap or giant technology jump that happened from the PS2 to the PS4. So to me, no, it doesn't feel retro at all. It feels like it was just Windows 7 versus Windows 10 or something. But and those are operating systems for PCs for anybody that didn't know what those were.
Oh, I'm a Mac person, so I don't know what those are.
Oh yeah, right.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I've heard the idea that retro could be considered 2 generations back. So like the GameCube and the PS2 and the Xbox are now considered retro or whatever. And I think I read that in a retro magazine, that magazine that was put together by the same team that did the retro VGS console, I believe. And they mentioned it in there that they were considering those types of systems as retro. And there was another game magazine, too, that I was reading, and I think it was called Mancy Games. You ever heard of that one?
Yeah, I think I have an issue of Mancy Games.
Yeah, that was...
that was from like 2003, 2004?
Yep. I actually think they only had like 3 or 4 issues. I have them all, but they had a price list in there, and they had an article in there where they were saying, when are you going to... Or no, it was a letter to the editor or whatever, and the letter just said, when are you going to start listing PlayStation 1 games? And then their response was, actually, we're going to do that really soon because PlayStation 1 is now considered retro, and that was 2003, and I'm just like, that wasn't even 10 years ago, But And it makes sense. It's exactly what you said. It hits it right on the head. I think that retro is exactly what it is, depending on how old you are and whatever you consider it, and that's totally fine. The word, I really wish the word could get replaced with certain things. I wish that people would learn which generations they were, so you could say like, which is your favorite fourth generation game, or favorite fourth generation console, or something like that. Like, but if you're gonna just say like, what's your favorite retro console? I mean, if someone said PS2, I'd have a hard time arguing against it. If you think about the library and the types of games that came out for it and the quality of games that came out for it.
So you like that the generation thing people are doing now, like third generation, fourth generation? Like you're into that?
I think that it would be cool if people learned it so that when you said it, and I don't know exactly which one is which. I think the Nintendo was fourth generation, like the NES, right?
I would just say that's 8-bit generation. I don't.
That's true. But then the Intellivision is 16-bit, so how do you even?
No, that's what I was going to say. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't. That's the thing is, you can say 8-bit and you're talking about the Nintendo or the Sega Master System, or you can say 16-bit. But yeah, I mean, really, the Atari was 8-bit too, wasn't it? Like the.
I think it was.
So you can't. That's not a good system. The generation system is better. I've never kind of gotten into it, but it has value.
Yeah, exactly. I would probably understand it better if someone said the 8-bit generation, but then, like as of the Dreamcast and up, they're all 128-bit, or maybe even, I don't even know if they are that now, but it's.
I have no idea.
I have no idea. I have no idea what to call them. So like, it is interesting when you think about that, though, and this is something my wife and I were actually talking about the other day, how big of a gap there was in game quality, or not even game quality, but like the types of games people played, the way the controllers were manufactured, and the graphical differences between games from like 1989 to 1999. But then that jump when the PlayStation 2 came in, and it was Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, all the way up to like the PS3 and PS4, like the only thing I can tell that's difference between those is the aspect ratio and the resolution.
Yep.
Like, is that really the only difference?
Seemingly, I mean
But then
like you said earlier, they're the same games.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But
that's like a grouch, like an old man saying that. It's not. I don't think that new games are good, but like just as an example, like I spent most of the day today playing a Formula One game on my PlayStation 3, and I spend like 99% of my gaming time, playing games back here, Nintendo games and whatnot. And so to me, it's like even a PlayStation 2 game, it's like, wow, this looks really good, or the F1 game was just like, looks awesome. And so the idea that I should go spend more money and buy like an Xbox One or something, to play the exact same game with better graphics is just like, I'm not going to do that. So. Yeah.
No, I'm in the exact same boat. My kids all got an Xbox One for Christmas last year. So we do have one in the house, and every once in a while they ask to play games like Minecraft and Terraria. So I have a world in Terraria. I have a character on Terraria, and I play it with them once in a while. I'd probably say I play like every other week with them for about an hour or two. And it's actually really fun. And I can totally see why people are into new consoles now, because there's a lot of things that are available, a nice variety of games, even on the Xbox One that a lot of people don't think have a lot of games on it. But between that and Volgar the Viking and Shovel Knight and a few other games, there's a lot of really cool stuff for even me, where I get completely lost when they want to play Halo, Master Chief Collection, or they want to play Destiny or something. I'm just watching it like, which ones are the good guys? How do I shoot?
So this morning, I don't know why I woke up this morning, and for some reason I wanted to play a first-person shooter. And the only first-person shooter I play is Wolfenstein 3D, but for some reason this morning I really want to play a first-person shooter. And when I bought my PS3, I bought it off of some kid on Craigslist, and it came with Call of Duty Black Ops. And I'd never played it. Maybe. I'd never played it before. And I've had that thing for over a year. And so this morning I'm like, I'm going to play some Call of Duty Black Ops. And I played it for like 5 minutes. And what you just said, my wife will tell you, I was like, I don't know who the bad guys are. And it was too much, and I just turned it off and put Formula One in instead and was like, never mind.
Yep. Yeah,
I feel like I sound really old right now.
No, it's funny. I'm in the exact same situation. There's a few first-person shooters that I got into that I really enjoyed on the like Xbox 360 or a PS3. One of them was Frontlines: The Fuel of War, which actually had a pretty unique concept to it, where you're I don't even know if I can explain it right, but it's basically your first-person shooter. You're running around. You have different types of people. You have people that are more like your spies, your snipers, just regular like mercenaries with melee weapons and things like that. But then the whole idea of the game was you have your like area that is your claimed area or whatever, and a battle will start with like one open field and it'll be cut in half. You have the blue and then you have the red. And when you're fighting, you're getting through and you have first-person shooter and you're just doing the usual first-person shooter stuff. But then it's almost like a capture the flag portion of it, where you get to a certain point and you have to stop there and you have to like put in this code or stand next to something and you take over that area, and then the map goes like this, it goes boop, and you have a little bit more of it, and you have to keep doing that and you have to get more and more of it until you have the entire area is like secured as your color. And it's really funny, like you concentrate on one way and you have a big online presence there too. It's like I think they had 16 people on the same map at a time, so it was 8 on 8, and you could be concentrating on one side and getting a whole big portion of the top, and then while that's happening, they're coming down, and there's lots of weapons, lots of tanks, lots of different vehicles, helicopters, things like that to use. And I had a pretty good time playing that too. But otherwise, if it doesn't have some kind of a unique like catch, like some kind of a interesting thing that just goes, that's different, I want to try that, I have a really, really hard time ever caring about it. I've tried jumping into some of the Halo games. I think I played Halo 4. I played the Call of Duties. I played Titanfall. That one's pretty neat, but really it's just Call of Duty with a bunch of big mechs. I don't know. I kind of don't get it either. I'm totally, like, they do the same thing every year, and they've been doing that since the last 2 generations, and I have a hard time keeping up, and I have a hard time even telling the difference. I mean, we'll go to, like, a GameStop or a store or something with the kids, and I'll look at it, and I'll be like, hey, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare is only $7.99, and it's like, Dad, that's like 8 years old. Like, I thought that just came out, and no, it's like Warfare Advanced 3 or something. You know, it's like the cover looks exactly the same. It's just a different year on the back. It's not 2010. It's 2015 or whatever. So it's really hard. It's a far cry from things like Doom 2 or like, you know, GoldenEye, when that was like the hugest thing in the world on the N64. Things like that as far as first-person shooters. But I don't know. When they first came out, when Doom came out and Wolfenstein came out, and we were getting a lot of first-person shooters, like in the mid-'90s, you had Alien vs. Predator on the Jaguar, a bunch of other games on the Saturn. I think Hexen came out, things like that. Like, I really felt like it was a fad. I thought when those things were done with, we'd get back to the cool games again because everyone wanted to play those games. And I just couldn't wait for that whole thing to get over with. And we're still, like, in it. Like, it's so weird how everyone wants those types of games. I mean, maybe not everyone, but a majority of people are, like, super stoked about these games.
They're very fun.
Yeah, even, like, role-playing games have, like, turned into first-person shooters. Like, Fallout 1 and 2, those were some of my favorite PC games. And Fallout 3 was a first-person shooter. Mass Effect is a first-person shooter RPG, and the Knights of the Old Republic, or I mean not Knights of the Old Republic. Those are more your traditional style, like PC RPGs. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I can't get into them, and I have a hard time. And I almost feel like it's my old man hands. Like I can't get the coordination. I can't figure out 2 analog sticks. I don't know what it is, and I'm sort of sad about it. Not like I haven't tried. I've tried a bunch of times, but I don't know. It sucks. I just can't get into it. So then I'll just go back into my basement and play on my old CRT. Matter of fact, you were talking about playing Formula 1 today. I actually spent last night, I was recording a Till I Die video that I will hopefully have uploaded next week of the Dreamcast release of Volgar the Viking, which is out of this world. It's amazing. It's such a good game. It plays just like the Xbox One version, but I would actually say the controls are far better. You get to use a Dreamcast controller first off, so that D-pad is like one of the nicest D-pads in all of gaming. I love the D-pad on the Dreamcast, and it plays so well. And I had given it a few tries before I had actually recorded the video, because I like to practice a little bit before I get in there, and the video is like 13 seconds long and I'm already dead. But I had recorded my reactions to me dying a few times, and I think it'll be really funny. I'm going to add that in as outtakes for next week's video. But yeah, it's great, and it's available online for free. Like, everyone should have it. There's no reason not to. The developers put it online for free, as in, like, they just like, hey, thank you so much for supporting the Kickstarter. If you still have a Dreamcast, here's the CDI, the CDI of the actual game, and they even included PDFs of the instruction manuals and the DVD case if you want to make them.
Nice.
Not to sit here and advertise for them or anything, but I did that over the last week, and I could not wait. And Friday night was like 4 hours of Volgar the Viking. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, let's see. What else would you like to chat about tonight? We've already gone past our 1 hour limit, which isn't necessarily a limit. We have as much time as we'd like to sit and chat for. And anybody that has been viewing or jumping in and out of the viewing, thank you so much for letting us know about the technical difficulties from our first, like, 45 minutes of this video. I apologize again. But luckily, every time Chris talked, it sounded perfect, so hopefully he talked a majority of that time. And then we won't have to worry about anything. No one will care. But yeah, if it's something that's like crippling and this video is not the best, we can always record another one again, and we'll just forget this ever happened. So thank you for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to chat about? How about we jump into like what we would consider bad retro video game consoles?
Yeah. So. Another sort of clickbait article that you see a lot online is, you know, the top 5 or top 10 worst game consoles of all time, you know, and I always hate articles like that because, first of all, I don't think that there are very few consoles that I think are really bad, especially when you're looking at them from like a retro gaming perspective. I could maybe see that if somebody had gone out in 1993 and bought a 3DO for $599, thinking that that was going to be their console for the next 5 or 6 years, you know, they might be kind of upset that it turned out the way it did, and they might think that's a bad console. And of course, it was a commercial failure because nobody wanted to spend $599 on a console. But at the same time, I feel like when you always see these articles or just, you know, people posting things on the forums, it's like keeping these little sound bites and little opinions going. It's like, well, the 3DO sucks because everybody says it sucks, you know? Like, well, have you ever played a 3DO? Like, do you have any 3DO games? Like, you can buy a 3DO now for like less than $100. You know,
Yep.
Maybe it's like I bought my 3DO, my current 3DO on Craigslist for like $80, and I got some games with it. And then I went and bought a bunch of more games, and there's a lot of good games on the 3DO. In fact, a lot of the early PlayStation games, like not the launch games, but like, you know, year 1 PlayStation games, were ports of 3DO games because they were good games. You know, like I have them right there, like Road Rash and Need for Speed and Gex, and they even got a port of Star Control 2 from the PC, which is one of the greatest PC games ever made. You know.
Yes, it is. Yes,
So,
it is.
you know, if you had a 3DO back in the day, then of course you were going to feel kind of left out because you maybe weren't playing Saturn or PlayStation games. But, you know, for someone to say now that the 3DO is like a bad console like that, I mean, that's kind of like an ignorant statement, you know. And you hear the same thing about like the Atari Jaguar, which I feel like has come up quite a bit in this conversation today, and I'm kind of glad. I like
the system in general has come up.
Yeah, we've mentioned it several times tonight. The Jaguar.
That's true. That's true. I thought you meant like me saying it was a crappy system. I was just
No,
making sure
not at all, not at all. But I've been playing a lot of Jaguar lately for some reason. I just bought. Someone just sold me the Wolfenstein 3D cartridge for the Jaguar.
Nice, very cool.
Because I like Wolfenstein. I didn't actually realize that it's like a whole different game than the PC game. It's even better. It's like now I'm playing all these new Wolfenstein levels. But you know, like how many from a retro gamer's perspective, like how many games, good games, does a system have to have before it's like worth owning? You know. And I'm not asking you to come up with a number, but I'm just saying, like,
yeah, I know, right?
You could easily say that the Jaguar has, like, at least, and this is a low number, but you could say it has 5. Easily, you could rattle off 5 games. for the Jaguar that are fun to play. And so, isn't that enough? Like, considering what a Jaguar sells for, like, instead of going around saying how bad it sucks, just buy one and buy a few good games for it, and you'll probably really enjoy it, you know. Or we had been talking previously about the Atari 7800, which, you know, again is maybe not one of the world's best systems, but it has Ninja Golf. And where else?
That's all you need.
Right, but
that's all you need.
You can't play Ninja Golf anywhere else except on an emulator, of course. But like that game has never been released for any other system, and that game's amazing. So
yes, it is.
You know, instead of saying like, "Oh, the 7800 sucks" because it didn't have like the huge library of games or long lifespan that the 2600 had, just say, "Yeah, I have a 7800. Like, how else am I going to play Ninja Golf?"
How are you going to play Ninja Golf? But also, it's backwards compatible with the entire 2600 library. It's backwards compatible with all the controllers, all the hookups, like paddles. You can use everything with the 7800. So even if none of the 7800 games were worth anything, if they were all crap, which they're definitely not, you have the entire 2600 library. And okay, fine, you would rather have a 2600? I wouldn't. I think the the 7800 is a far more reliable system, and it's a lot easier to play games. The controller ports are in the front instead of in the back around the big old wooden like Atari 2600. I mean, I just experienced playing with the 2600 at Pizza and Games last month. That's the name of that convention that I run in September, and it was so much easier hooking up the 7800 as opposed to the 2600. The 2600 is a beautiful system, and I love it for sure, forever and ever. But man, hooking that up and trying to get it so that kids and people could come around and sit and play it, having to hit that reset button 50 times to get to that special game exactly how you want it to be played, or how do you get two-player mode? You got to hit select, you know, whatever on the 2600. On the 7800, it's an actual video game console that was intended to be kind of the next generation of it all. And 7800 games that are awesome. You mentioned Ninja Golf. That's for sure one of the really good ones. But Ball Blazer is also an impressive like game on what the actual system could do. The graphics on that are really, really amazing, and I think it actually has a good soundtrack. I think it only has like 1 or 2 tracks, songs on it, but it's really good. I mean, the 7800 is an excellent system, and I've always like had this really weird point of view with the 7800. When the NES came out, and I love the NES. That's the best 8-bitter, you know, in that generation by far. I mean, there's nothing close. But the system that I always kind of wanted, and I always felt like, God, I'd really like to get my hands on, was the 7800. A, because of the 2600 library, and then all these like other quirky games for it. Like, was it Pole Position 2? I think was the pack-in game with it. That is a really fun game. Miss Pac-Man plays excellent. I think there was a Mario Brothers version on that was really good. There's just tons of games. All those arcade games like Joust and Dig Dug and Galaga really play excellent on the 7800. And I like those games so much that I actually prefer the 7800 over the Master System. So when people are talking about like what's the second best 8-bitter, I'm always the only person that jumps in with the 7800, and my argument's always the same. It's like, well, there's like these 6 games that are really fun, and the entire 2600 back, like the back library, and it sucks. It doesn't suck, but it sucks trying to come up with a convincing argument against that, because Master System fans are huge, and they know that their system has all these amazing games. And I have a Master System. I've just never gotten it. I never got hooked on it. I don't really understand how anyone would prefer the Master System over the NES at all, and even the 7800. I think the 7800 is a better system. The controllers, I'll give you that. The 7800 controllers are really bad, and that was actually where I was going to go into that, like segue into your point about like what is a crappy retro console, like I mean, what's a crappy console in general. Like if you have 5 good games and the system only costs you like $40-50, you have that little library of games, you have a console you can pull out as an interesting conversation piece, and it's not crap, it's fun. You know, it's something fun to play around with. But with that being said, I think the Atari 5200, with its smaller library, and there's some good games on it, but it's almost unplayable with the controller that came with the 5200. Seeing as how the like failure rate on those is something like 80%, like you have to open them up and fix those controllers to even get them to work now. It's kind of crazy. But I would consider the 5200 to be a crappy system, just because of the issues with controllers and the fact that it doesn't backwards compatible with anything. The carts are huge, and then it was instantly eclipsed by the 7800. I think that came out like what 2 years later or something. I don't even know the actual like fact on that or not. But it was just like this little blip, and it was instantly like regret. Like if you went with the 5200, you were probably wishing you didn't real fast.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you can buy rebuild kits for those. You can buy like replacement flex circuits for the controllers. I mean, I don't want to start like defending the 5200, but I kind of have like a soft spot for it because it was actually the first home console that I ever played.
Oh, for real? Okay.
Well, I never had one, but when I was in first and second grade, which would have been like 1983, 1984, my best friend had a 5200. And so, you know, every day after school we'd go to his house, and you know, we were like 7-year-olds, so like, I mean, it's easy for me to say like we never had a problem with the controllers, but we were 7, so of course we're not going to have a problem with it. We just played it, you know. And,
right.
But I think I actually played a 5200 before I played a 2600, so I always thought that system was really cool. And honestly, the main reason that I don't have a 5200 is just that it's huge, and I don't really have space for a 5200. So
it's even bigger than the original Xbox or the Xbox One.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a huge footprint. So I personally wouldn't go so far as to call it crappy, but at the same time, as a huge like retro gaming guy, I also don't have one. So it's also not that great, I guess.
There you go. That's true. Another one that I would mention that is, you know, on its way to being a crappy console, in my opinion, would probably be the Xbox 360, just because of the red ring of death and those failures that happen in the actual physical hardware. Like, I really wonder, you know, 10 to 20 years from now, when people are considering, you know, the last generation as a retro gaming, you know, generation or whatever, like, oh, I totally love retro gaming, I got a PS3 or whatever. Like, you think of those three systems, the 360, the PS3, and the Wii, I would bet that 20 years from now, the only ones that are still functioning properly are going to be Wiis. Because it's Nintendo. They kind of know what they're doing at this point, since they're, like, what, in their 6th generation system or whatever already? But yeah, the 360, a lot of great games for it for sure. You know, all these new generation consoles, they have a lot of fun games for sure. Nothing that I would necessarily invest a gazillion hours into like I used to. But it's pretty crappy the way that they put the hardware together and just slopped it into this basically a glorified PC with less power than some of the games that were coming out on PCs, even in, you know, 10 years ago when the Xbox 360 came out. But that would be kind of crappy. I mean, that could be a way of defining crappy. Like, yeah, this system is crappy because it doesn't work, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder that myself. Like, how many of those are still going to be functioning in 10 or 15 years? And personally, I've had one of my Xbox 360s die, and I can't speak for other consoles, but I think with the 360, it's because they tried to basically take a PC and stick it in a little tiny case, and it was getting too hot, you know. And yeah, it's bad build quality, but you know, as far as the Wii, I think maybe like something like the Wii or the GameCube is going to last longer, only because they didn't do that. You know, the Wii is not this like huge overpowered system that's crammed into a little tiny case. So I think for that reason that they might last longer. But you know, it's kind of hard for me to fathom now that like in 20 years someone is going to think that an Xbox 360 is like a retro console. But I'm sure they will, and it's kind of sad because the only thing I could kind of compare it to is like my Sega CD is a Model 1 Sega CD, which is sort of known for not being reliable, and it's always in the back of my mind. And I had to fix it. Thankfully, I was able to fix it, but it's always kind of in the back of my mind, like, well, how much longer is it going to last before it breaks? And I don't think that about any of my cartridge-based systems. Like, I mean, theoretically, they're eventually going to die, but they're doing fine so far, and they don't have any moving parts. So, you know, unless you have to replace some capacitors or something, they should be fine. But the one thing is that I have that Sega CD, and I'm always kind of every time I play it, I wonder, like, is this going to be it? You know? And so I and that's how somebody's going to feel 15 years from now when they're like they want to go back and play those old 360 games. You know, well, when's that Red Ring of Death going to show up?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, that's interesting that you brought up the Sega CD. I actually have a buddy who had the same model, a Model 1, ran into an issue, and it seemed like it was just a power supply issue or something really random with the system just not getting power. Like, it was hooked up to the Genesis, stacked on top, and you didn't put a card in, so it would boot right to the Sega CD,
Right.
and you'd get it powered up and you get it running, and the music would start, so you'd hear that doo-doo-doo-doo, you know, the whole like Sega CD music, but the screen wouldn't move, and it would just stop. Like, that was frozen on that, but you could hear the Sega CD music, so it was doing something. None of the lights would light up, you couldn't get the disk drive to open, nothing would happen, and we've gone over just about every power supply issue that we've been able to find online, and it's not been solved yet. And when that kind of happened, I started getting a little nervous about the one that we have, and I have a Model 2 Sega CD, which I guess is a little more reliable. Maybe I'm not even sure, but I haven't had any real issues with it yet. I also don't think any of the capacitors have been replaced yet, so I'm kind of like on the edge of my seat waiting for something bad to happen, or else I'm thinking maybe I should open these up and get a good look inside. But as a way to kind of hold those days off of having to not have a Sega CD readily available, I wound up running into Sean, or TurboCon, from the PC Engine FX forums, and he sold me a JVC Exi for super cheap, and it is awesome. I can't believe it, how nice it is to have one AC adapter, and it has AV outputs that are just regular, like AV connections, not a special proprietary cable or anything like that. And I would say if you're ever in the market looking for a Sega CD, you might want to think about going that route. And I've been looking online; they're around 120, maybe less, maybe a little more, but that's not bad. And it's really, really nice to have that. The JVC also is region free. I don't think the CD games are. You have to have either Japanese version, which was the Wonder Mega, to play the Japanese CD games. You have to have the Exi to play the American CDs. But the cartridge slot plays both Japanese and US, so Mega Drive or Genesis games. And I'm very happy about that. I think it's amazing. It's really cool.
Yeah, I was going to say about the region locking of the Sega CD games. If you have an EverDrive, you can use that to load CD BIOS files from other regions. So it's like yet another reason to get an EverDrive.
I guess so. I actually have never purchased any kind of an EverDrive yet for any systems. And I know there's some on just about every system there is, and the Turbo EverDrive is something that I've been really thinking about. I have not bit the bullet on that one yet. I don't have any EverDrives for any of my consoles. It's just all strictly the original cartridges, or also some reproductions that I've been just toying around with, or homebrew, and some fan-translated RPGs that we never got in the U.S. But that's all I have. I don't have any EverDrives or anything like that yet. Not to say I'm against it or anything like that, or I won't someday, because I've wanted some for sure. I would love to get some for pretty much every console from like the 8-bit and 16-bit generations. That would be a lot of fun, just to be able to say, oh, I'm going to try this game today. Why'd you get it? No, I just literally just want to try it today. That'd be really cool to be able to try games out like that instead of having to bite the bullet and buy like a more expensive game for that or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I have EverDrives for. I think I pretty much have every EverDrive that there is. I think, and
Nice.
it is, except that you said something earlier about why you didn't like emulation, or why you didn't find it fulfilling. Because there's something about scrolling through a menu that just feels sort of maybe empty compared to going to a shelf and like taking the cartridge off the shelf and like, oh yeah, I think and the same exact thing for EverDrives. And like I have a buddy who looks at all my games, and every time he comes over here, why don't you just sell all these games? You could get so much money, and you have the EverDrives, and it's like it's just not. Like, I like having my EverDrive so that I can play games that I don't have yet.
Yep.
But if I play a game on my EverDrive and I really like it, then I want to go buy the game. Like, I don't want to play it on my EverDrive. Like, it doesn't... Even though, like, I mean, the experience of playing the game is the exact same, but it just doesn't... It just feels like,
Yeah. There are some... Oh, I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to say, like, for me, when I got my EverDrives, that was like a reason to get rid of all the games that I wasn't really into, but then I want the option of playing. Or like, for instance, when I first started my website, which predates my YouTube channel, I got into the habit of just buying every game I saw. Like if I went to a thrift store and there were games, I grabbed them. If I went to like a used game store that had like cheap retro games, I would grab them. And the whole point was like, oh, well, then I can review this game, because I didn't want to use an emulator to review a game, because I don't think that you should do that. But at the same time, I wasn't buying the game necessarily because I wanted to bring it home and play it, but just like, well, I'll buy the game and I'll review it and then I'll get rid of it. And I had like boxes of loose cartridges, like in my room and in the attic and wherever else. And when I got my EverDrives, I was just like, oh, well, you guys can all go now. So like I had like a huge thinning. I think at that point my collection, which was really still serving a function because it was there so that I had games to review, that's when it got trimmed down to a library. Because now if all of a sudden I decide there's some game I want to review because I read about it or heard about it or whatever, then I can just go ahead and load it up on an EverDrive, and I don't feel weird about that. But I don't see like the EverDrives as a replacement for having like a library of games that you like or think are cool.
Yep. I think that there are moments in the day or times when I'm going through like games that I have, and I have these perfect explanations or this perfect idea in my head. Like, this is exactly how I can tell someone who has all these emulators or used to have like tons of games, but then just decided to get rid of everything and then went straight emulator on their laptop or on PCs or even on like modded Wii's or Xboxes and things like that. And I have this perfect explanation. Like, this is why you need to have the actual hardware, and you have to have these actual like games and systems and all the different controllers and things. But when I explain it on like a show like this or whatever, it sounds so stupid. Like, because I'm just listening and I'm thinking about it like, why do I need to have a box or an instruction manual and have these things? But it is sort of an unexplainable thing. It's like when you have a physical copy, there's just something much more special about it. It's like, what did Stan Lee say about like comic books? Like, where people were thinking about how digital comics were going to take over and people weren't going to own comic books anymore. And Stan Lee's quote was something about like, boobs. They're nice to look at on a digital computer, but they're a lot better in real life.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. I mean, the instruction manual, having the manuals, all the little extras that come in it. Sometimes you get a spine, sometimes you get little stickers and scratch and sniff things or whatever. It's awesome to be able to go through and like use that to interactively play through the game. When you have it on an emulator, and sure, there's all these different hacks and different versions of games, and those are always really fun to play too. But it's an awesome thing to have best of both worlds, where you can use the emulation to try games or to, play these hacks and different translation projects and things like that, or like finished games, like almost like a patched for pieces of the game that were broken at one time but are now fixed. I'm kind of referring to that like Castlevania 2 rework that they wound up doing a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you heard about that, but there was all those things in the game that are really stupid, like really terrible moments in the game where you have to do these really obscure random things. But someone wound up putting text in the game where they tell you how to do those things, so you don't actually have to purchase Nintendo Power issue number 2 to find out how to go next to the mountain and crouch for 10 seconds. The little twisty twirl will come and pick you up and carry you away. A person in town actually says you have to do that. Like, those kind of things are really cool and really fun to be able to play games like that as well. So, I mean, I'm not against emulation at all. I'm not against having EverDrives. I'm definitely not against having large collections or large libraries, as long as you're playing the games. I mean, if you're just collecting things to have a collection, they're just going to sit on your shelf and you're never going to touch it, or you're going to get it VGA graded, that's the only time you're going to catch any like flack from me. I'll make fun of people that do that.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even mind it so much, but there's enough copies of games floating around that if somebody wants to have a complete collection of whatever, because some people take it there and they're like, well, you have this game that you're not playing and somebody else can play that. But it's like, there's enough copies of that floating around. But what bothers me is those are usually the people that will overpay for games because, well, I have a hole in my collection. I don't have game X and I need to get it, and so I'm going to go ahead and pay the $30 that somebody charges online, and then that becomes the new price. Like, I I don't care what people.
Yeah.
This is like just my life sort of philosophy. I don't care what people do unless it affects other people negatively, and then I have a problem. And, and collect hard mentality has a tendency generally to affect guys like us that just want to play games.
Yep. I think having like many copies of one game because it's rare, or having like, you know, a pack of like 20 system cards just to have them. It's like, dude, the reason those are so expensive is because A, people are stupid enough to pay like way too much for them on eBay or on Facebook or whatever, and B, because you've got like 80% of them. Please distribute them to the community. Like, it's that mentality that I just don't understand. But yeah, I think the argument then too on the other side is that, hey, it's their money. You know, if they want to spend, you know, $600 on a terraforming, who's going to stop them? I mean, it's just going to happen, and it's the buyer's fault, and it's the people selling it, it's their fault too. If everyone had just sold their games for as much as they purchased them for initially, you know, there would be no inflation, there would be no, you know, price difference from now and from the one that began. So it sucks. It's kind of weird, but being in a spot where I just want to play games, I just want to play the games. I mean, I don't care necessarily if it's the U.S. version or the Japanese version. I mean, I've got plenty of Turbo games or, you know, Sega CD games that are just empty, that just loose discs. You know, sometimes you get a disc that's kind of scuffed up and it's like $20 or whatever. I've purchased a few games like that. I think I got Lunar on the Sega CD like that once for like $12. It was just a loose disc, and I'm like, you know what? I've always wanted to play that, and it's not a CDR, so I'll pick that up, and yeah, that game goes for a lot more.
I don't know. Lately, I've really gotten into the habit. I don't know why, and it's only with Sega CD, but I've been buying a lot of loose Sega CD games. I think I really don't like those long boxes that much, and if I can get the cheaper, then awesome. So I got like a little CD wallet over here, and it's starting to sort of slowly fill up with loose Sega CD discs because I just want to play the games.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of really good Sega CD games, and I know that I don't think the library of Sega CD, and I don't want to jump into like a huge debate here, but I don't think the library of Sega CD games is anywhere near as good as like Turbo CD. But there's a lot of really cool things, and it was so neat to see the beginning of like the CD era of gaming coming, and it happened in the 16-bit era. It was really cool to see the beginnings of those. I mean, even FMV games, like, they're almost always really bad, but to play those and see that like 90s attitude in those types of games where the acting was horrible and the gameplay was pretty bad, but that you could see the beginnings of it. And it's interesting because I've always compared a lot of what people love about gaming now. They play their God of Wars and they play their Uncharted, and I'm watching people playing it, and I'm like, hey, this is kind of like Dragon's Lair, but not as good. Like, it's like, because you're watching 15 minutes of dialogue between these two characters, and then the cliff collapses and you're falling, and it's like, hit A, and you have to hit A at the perfect time to grab onto a rope, and then you're pulling yourself up, and I'm like, are you playing right now, or are you watching? Like, you just did a place your button here timed event, just like Dragon's Lair. And it's so funny to see how, God, that was 25 years ago, and we're still doing those kind of things now. And we mocked the hell out of those games when they initially came out in the early 90s about how bad FMV games were, and how at first everybody thought it was the wave of the future, and then everyone was like, no, and then it instantly like just died, and those types of games were mocked. But here we are in 2015, and people are making FMV games, but not FMV style. It's really funny. Yeah, I love Sega CD. There's a ton of really good games for it. I think it did FMV games better than the Turbo did FMV games, although they didn't really try very hard with the Turbo, because in Japan they weren't exactly the hugest thing, and all the 99% of the Turbo games we got were just translated Japanese games. But some of my favorite FMV games, since we're on the topic of FMV, or at least I took us to the topic of FMV, are Dragon's Lair, of course, and then It Came from the Desert on the Turbo. And then I actually really like Wirehead on the Sega CD. I don't know if you've ever played it. Not a whole lot of people have. But it actually stars one of my favorite actors named Steve Whiting. He was a character named Josh from Batman Returns, and he was also in Shutter Island. I think a couple other movies. He's always like bit parts, but he's really funny. He's like a very funny guy. But if you want a visual of who he was in the movie Batman Returns, and he was the guy that got his nose bit by Penguin. I don't know if you remember that scene or not. But anyway, Wirehead is a game that plays super similar to Dragon's Lair, but it all takes place in a really horridly made movie. And it's all live action, and it looks awful, but it's so funny. Oh, it is just hilarious. I would recommend playing it, or at least watching a video on YouTube of the playthrough of it, because you'll probably laugh. It's bad, but it's so fun.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I'm not really a fan of FMV games, so I don't have like an example of an FMV game I like. I can only say I remember when Dragon's Lair came out, and I remember the first time I saw it in an arcade. I don't know if you played Dragon's Lair back in the day.
Hold on. Did you wait? Did you just say Dragon's Lair or Dragon Slayer?
No, Dragon's Lair. Is that not what we're talking about?
No, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yes. Okay, good. Yes.
Okay, good. No, so yeah, I remember when Dragon's Lair came out, and I don't know if you know this or remember, but shortly after, when it came out, it was so popular, these huge crowds would gather around it, because we were all used to playing, arcade games with 8-bit graphics, and all of a sudden, this arcade game looks like a cartoon, and because of that, people would crowd around it so you couldn't even see it. So they started making the arcade cab with a second monitor up on top so that people could see it from far away. And I remember coming in a Chuck E. Cheese when I was about 7 years old and seeing that, and it just blew me away. But then I played it and realized, that it wasn't really what my perception of a video game was, and I kind of turned me off pretty much instantly. So.
Yep, and I believe those arcade cabinets were actually laser discs inside of them. So the games were actually laser discs. That's impressive. That's amazing. I would love to see those. I think I've seen videos online of people opening them up and showing that there was actually like a laser disc system in there, and then the game, a huge laser disc just sitting in there, and the commands you're doing on the arcade, the joystick, were actually like switching, the disc spots on that, and the laser disc itself, being an analog spinning, device, actually jumps from scene to scene extremely quick. So that's how in the arcade it felt like it was jumping really fast. When it got ported to things like the Sega CD, you would do an action and it would be like this pause. It's like load, 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 and then response. Like it was really cool. It was really cool in the arcades for sure. There was Dragon's Lair 1, and I think there was a sequel, and then there was Space Ace. Those are like the big 3 arcade games that I can remember.
Yeah, and those were done by Don Bluth, if you know who he is, if you've seen the movie The Secret of Nim.
Yes.
The same guy. So huge fan of Secret of Nim, not so into Dragon's Lair. And I've actually never played Space Ace.
Oh, same thing. I mean, it's the same concept, the same style of gameplay. It's just in space. So, no, those are. I mean, I have great memories of them. I don't know necessarily if I would say they are really fun games. That's kind of more of a nostalgia thing. Like I couldn't jump in and say like, "What? The gameplay is wonderful. It's perfect." Like, it's fun, and I remember like wanting so bad to get through that story because I wanted to see more of it. And you memorize everything. There's no way you can play through it in one time. Yeah. You have to memorize things, and you go through it over and over again. And it was like you got to watch the movie over and over again until you got further and further. And that was almost the most fun thing about it. It was just you're memorizing things, and it's almost like you're playing a giant game of memory.
Yeah, and I believe that Dragon's Lair was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first arcade games that was 50 cents instead of a quarter. So you were going to pay double the money just to memorize the game.
Yeah, that sucks. When I started seeing 50-cent games, that was not good because, man, I didn't have a lot of allowance as a kid, and being able to come to an arcade with 8 quarters and be able to spend a couple hours playing games versus like spending 10 minutes is a big difference. Dragon Slayer will suck up your quarters fast too. Yeah. So, we are getting close to almost 2 hours, 15 more minutes into 2 hours. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in here and having viewers. I've seen we've jumped between like 5 to 8 viewers for most of this time. Again, apologizing for the sound issue we had for the first portion of this episode. It seems to be it's been fixed for a while now, so I'm really happy to hear that. And I'm very happy to also see comments and some chatter on the YouTube channel. That's really cool to see people responding positively to this. Chris, is there anything else you want to talk about for the last, like, I don't know, we can go another 15 minutes-ish, and anything else that you can think of that you'd like to chat about?
Well, I mean, the only other thing that we had on our list, and we kind of had it framed a different way, but we had when YouTube channels jump the shark.
Yeah, what do you
And
mean by that?
what have you heard the term "jump the shark"? Like when a TV show jumps the shark. It's a reference to an old episode of Happy Days, but it's basically when you say the point when like a TV show wasn't good anymore, like something happened where like this show was good, like Cheers was good, and then Diane left and Rebecca showed up, and it's like that's when the show
Jumped the shark.
Jumped the shark.
Okay, yes, I do remember the term. I couldn't exactly remember what it meant, but
Yeah.
now I totally know what you mean. That's kind of like mine. I think I started putting up YouTube videos in 2007. I think I've been jumping the shark since about 2008. So
Really, it's not
I know,
good.
I totally know. No, it's not good. That's fine. That's why I'm trying to do these things now, so I don't have to do any editing or anything into it. I just put them online and we're good to go.
Yeah. And so the reason I kind of thought about that is, you know, when you're a YouTube creator, you can, as you know, you can go into your dashboard and you have access to all these stats and everything. And of course, you can see how many people subscribe to your channel, but you can also see how many people unsubscribe to your channel. And on top of that, you can see where they unsubscribe to your channel. Like it'll break it down like these people unsubscribe to your channel from the channel page, and these other people unsubscribe from like a video page. Like, so that's understandable that somebody might unsubscribe from a video page, because like let's say you had like some minor YouTube personality that makes some statement like they would rather play like Street Fighter the movie, the game, than any Mortal Kombat game ever made. You know, you could see a Mortal Kombat fan just being like, nope, unsubscribe. You know, I wouldn't do that, but I could see somebody doing that. But the thing is, like, at least on my channel, and I'm not complaining, I just think it's sort of a fascinating thing to think about.
Right.
The majority of people that unsubscribe from my channel, and I probably lose about 25 subscribers a month. It's just that you gain more than you lose, and so you always are going up. But
sure. Yeah.
And the majority of them unsubscribe from my channel page, which means that either unsubscribed from their list of subscribed channels, or they actually went to my channel page and unsubscribed. And sort of the only thing that I could think of why they would do that is, well, this guy's not uploading often enough, and I just don't want to be, you know, subscribed. Which I think is just kind of bizarre behavior, because I've never unsubscribed to somebody like for that reason. Like there are people I'm subscribed to on YouTube or like on iTunes for podcasts who haven't uploaded anything for years, but I really like their content, and so I don't want to unsubscribe because, well, what if they come back? Because that actually happened to me one time. Someone wasn't uploading podcasts anymore, but I thought it was like the best podcast ever, and then just randomly I saw on my phone that there was like a new podcast, you know? And if I had unsubscribed, then I wouldn't have seen that. But then sort of I took that thought and went, well, when would I personally unsubscribe from something? Because I don't think if a YouTube creator says something in a video that I don't agree with, like, I'm not going to unsubscribe. But there are things that a YouTube content creator could do that would make me unsubscribe. And for me personally, that's kind of when the show like jumps the shark. Like, I don't think that your show as a whole is good anymore. And so then I like go ahead and say, like, you know, I no longer want to be subscribed to your channel because I don't want to see your videos in my feed because you went from being something I wanted to watch to something that I don't want to watch.
That makes sense. I can understand that. I'm curious about two things. One, I'm not sure I've ever unsubscribed to anyone. And there might have been someone where I subscribed to something and then I realized it was just a big advertisements channel or something like that. Like maybe I watched a Late Night with David Letterman video and then I realized, oh crap, I just subscribed to CBS and now my whole wall is filled with trailers for these upcoming shows. Unsubscribe. I bet I've done that before. But I'm also curious about if there's like a default like setting. If someone unsubscribes to a channel or gets banned from YouTube, or the channel gets or his account is lost or deleted or something, if it just says unsubscribed from, you know, channel. Like if it's just a default setting, and maybe that's not actually what's happening. Maybe people are just losing their accounts, or maybe they just decided to close out their account for whatever reason, or merge with another one. You know, who knows? It could be that. I wonder if there's a default. Is that like a majority of them are from your channel, or is it just
I don't
random?
think, like on YouTube, I don't think that you can see that. You know, like why, like what happened, or if that, because once
Sure.
someone's unsubscribed, they're just gone. Like for Twitter, and again, it's not because I'm complaining or I have a problem. I find that kind of behavior just sort of, I find it interesting. And so like on Twitter, for instance, there's a separate website you can go to where if you sign up for it, it keeps track of your Twitter followers. And
Wow.
if somebody unfollows you, you can see who unfollowed you. And so just for me, it's like this fun little game where like I log on to Twitter and it tells you, oh, you have 2 new followers. And I'll look at those followers and I can say like, that's a legitimate follower. This other person will unfollow me within the next 72 hours. And so then in the next few days when I can see that I've lost followers, I can go log on to this other website and go, oh, yep, that person unfollowed me because they were only ever following you in the first place to get you to follow back.
Oh, sure.
Which I think is weird, but I don't care, like whatever. There's like
Right.
I have Twitter followers that are like legitimate followers that like me and interact with me, and like those are the Twitter followers that I care about. And like
Sure.
anybody else is just like, I don't have a problem with you, I don't dislike you, you're just like a non-factor, you know.
Yep.
But so on YouTube you don't have that option. So it's like for sure there could be people that it shows up as an unsubscriber because they lost their account or whatever. But you really have no way of knowing. But so when I see that, it's just like, well, maybe it's because I haven't uploaded in a while or whatever. But you know, because I know for sure, like with podcasts, that's like an issue. And I don't know why. Like, because for me, it's not a problem. But there are a lot of consumers of podcasts who expect new content, however often. Like, I want you to tell me you're going to be a weekly podcast, and then if you don't stick to that, I'm going to unsubscribe because that's how they want to consume YouTube, or not YouTube. That's how they want to consume podcast content. And
Right.
there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like that's their criteria. If you're not uploading as often as you say, then I'm going to listen to other podcasts instead. And so when I see that kind of happen on YouTube, I just kind of figure the same thing. So again, I don't have a problem with it. I just think like, well, if you watched my videos and you thought they were cool, like because I didn't upload often enough, like now you're gonna like not watch any of them anymore. Like I don't.
Yeah, I haven't talked to. I mean, I've talked to a few people that are like really consistent on YouTube. I think you. I mean, you're one of the few people I've talked to. But Dan Van Dam, or Danny and Friends, or Worth Your Universe. I don't know if you've followed any of his stuff. He's got a couple thousand subscribers, and he's always been a fan of my channel. So he usually comments on a lot of my YouTube videos. Him and Luke Morse. Actually, when Luke had like less than 200 subscribers, I found him and I subscribed to him because he had mentioned in one of his videos that he was from the Midwest and he moved to Japan. And that was like, when I was 18 years old, that was my dream. Like, I thought I was going to work for 12 months in a factory, save up like 10 grand, and just say goodbye and move to Japan. I wanted to do that so bad. And he wound up actually just doing that. He was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And we moved to Japan, and he's like happy, but also, he's got a lot of interesting opinions on how that happens and his life in general, how it all worked out for him. But I wound up talking to him a lot, and he was subscribed to my channel, and I was subscribed to him, and we both had like 200 subscribers, and his is now this huge giant thing, and I've got, I think I've doubled it since then. That was like 2007 or 2008. And it's really funny. He's always been like a fan of my videos, so once in a while when I post a video, he'll comment on it, he'll just go back and forth and chatter on it, and he's like, I don't know how you don't have more subscribers for your videos, and I'm like, well, it's because, Luke, you do like 3 videos a week, and you're consistent, and you kind of do the same thing every week. And me, I'll make like a really stupid video of me like talking about Neo Geo CD load times, or else I'll do another video a week later where I'm, not doing anything, and I'm just hanging out with my kids watching them go sledding or something. Like, it's not consistent at all. And when I talk to people that are in the podcasting universe or whatever, their side of it, and I ran into like 3 or 4 different groups that do things. One of them is, God, I think it's the Retronauts. It's the one that Trickman Terry is a part of. Is that Retronauts or is that something different? Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, Trickman Terry is from EGM. He used to be like an editor or a writer for that magazine from back in the 90s. And he talked to me about it, and he's like, in the podcasting world, if you don't update or upload on the days that you say you are, it's like murder. It's like you've just committed a horrible, horrible felony, and you're going to lose people so fast. And once you lose them, you won't recover them because they're going to be already feeling like they got burned by you. And I never really thought of YouTube as the same way as that, because, I mean, I've seen plenty of people that have done lots of videos, 1 a week, 2 a week, whatever, and then just disappeared for months and then came back because they, had more free time again. Like work had been, a little bit less stressful, so they were able to do things. And I've always kind of had that feeling too, where like I'll get to it when I get to it. There's videos where I spend a ton of time editing, and I get it out there, and I'm really proud of it, and then it gets like 60 views, and that's where it sits for 5 years or whatever. And then there's videos that I put out there that I just literally walked through like a convention and hit record and recorded a bunch of like game consoles and TVs, and I put it up, and it gets like 500 views in a day, and it's like I can't predict it. I have no idea what people are going to watch or people are going to get excited about. So I go from being very involved and trying to do a video a week to going 3 months without uploading. So that's my issue, is that I'm not consistent at all on YouTube. And with podcasts, I always was under the impression that it was way more important to be consistent with people so that you'll always have your following. And I found that out, that it is probably true in both ways, but especially with podcasts. I actually run a podcast with a friend named Zach. We do a horrible, it is awful. Our podcast stinks. It's called Pro Wrestling Off Topic. We talk about professional wrestling. So if you like wrestling at all, which I hate, but we chat about it. I love it, but I hate it. It's the stupidest thing in the world. We watch wrestling because we hate it, so we criticize it. That's it. It's the dumbest thing in the world. It's not good. Don't listen to us. But we do it, on average, we do once every other week. And when we get into a roll where we do like 10 weeks in a row where we're uploading new podcasts and we get followers, and I host them on Podomatic.com, we can get like 250 to 300 listens or downloads a week, and that gets really popular, and it's like keeps rolling. We get lots of Twitter messages, we get lots of like comments on the podcast itself, but then we'll go like 2 months without doing one, just because life gets in the way and it's impossible. Like Zach is a busy guy, and I've got 1,000 kids, so it's like, when do we find time to do this? So we would like literally find a way when we get a whole bunch of like messages saying like, you guys, where are you? What are you doing? Like, this huge event happened. How come you didn't even do an episode about it? So we would literally like meet during my lunch break at work, and we'd go into a car, and I'd grab my cell phone and hit record, and we would just talk for half an hour, and then I'd go and upload it to Podomatic with some music at both ends, so that the podcast is like 38 minutes long or whatever, and then everyone's happy again. So it's really weird. I never thought that YouTube was the same way, but maybe it is. GameSack, I remember when they went from a video every week, which was like 10, 15 minutes long, to one every other week. And I always thought that was pretty cool that they went one every other week, because then the episodes were like 20, 25 minutes long. They were like much longer, much like your like the launch specials and things like that. They were good, huge, long videos that were kind of double the length of the other ones, and that, it made sense. Instead of one 10-minute video every week, it was one 20-minute video every other week. But now they're doing, these 20-minute videos every week, and it's just, it's awesome. I love them, but they're going to run out of topics. And then maybe they won't run out of topics, but they're running out of, like, because I think they just did, like, whatever video they're doing now, they're doing, like, number 6 of. Like, it's like Left in Japan, Part 7, or, like all these things, and it's not, I wonder when they're going to run out of ideas, and they're just going to start doing, like, it's the Mario episode, like...
Yeah, no, I don't know. They might, but like I know before they switched over to one a week, like I saw Joe, I forgot on which forums, but he made a comment about that. Like their YouTube channel would grow so much faster if they uploaded every week. So I know that was something that he really wanted to work towards, because YouTube really does reward you for uploading consistently. And it's part of kind of like what drives me nuts is not. I don't think I've ever gotten a comment on YouTube from someone asking, like, where are you, or why aren't there any more videos, or whatever, even though, because, like, right now I told you it's been a month, but this is not like the longest stretch. Like I've gone longer than that before, and I've never gotten like a comment about it. But what I can see is when I look at the stats, I can see stuff drop off, and I can tell that YouTube is no longer promoting my videos as much because I haven't uploaded in a while. So for me, like that's the source of pressure. Is I notice like, well, now I'm not gaining nearly as many subscribers per day, or I'm not seeing as many views per day, and that I can take that to mean like you're not promoting my videos as much as you were, because some of my most popular videos are videos that I uploaded a long time ago. So it's not just that it's a new video; it's just that YouTube was suggesting it to people. Oh, you watch this video? Well, go watch this guy's video, and so that's gone. And then like the other thing you were saying about, you never know like what videos you're going to upload that are going to get a lot of views. It used to drive me nuts that the first video I ever uploaded was really bad, first of all, so I'm not suggesting that you watch it, but it was like a review of TNC Surf Design's Wooden Water Rage for the Nintendo.
Wow.
Just because it was a game I had when I was a kid, and it was my first YouTube video, so I didn't want to do like a game that I thought was, like really good, because I'd want to do a better job on the video, So it was not a good video. It was the first time I'd ever made a video in my life, and it wasn't that great of a video. And I went on to make all these other videos, but people were watching that one. Like that video had like 1,000 views when other videos hardly even had 100, and I'm just thinking like don't watch that, because if that's the video you watch, you're gonna say, well, this guy's an idiot. Like you're not gonna watch anything else. It's like, get that out of there. And I've never taken it down or anything, but then like the reverse of that is that there are videos that I've done where I really thought it was good, and I really had a good time making it, and I thought it was going to be a successful video, and then like it wasn't. And even to this day, like some of my favorite videos that I've made are the ones that don't even hardly have any views, because I just had like a really good time doing it. Like I did one about, I did all the baseball games that are on the Neo Geo.
Oh, awesome.
And it was just fun because I love baseball games, and I just did like some goofy crap. Like I had to play around with Audacity to learn how to make my voice sound like a robot for this little voiceover thing I was doing, and it just made me laugh to do it. And even to this day, I think that video has like 300 and something views, or some really low number, and it's just like, maybe some people would get upset about it, but it's like, man, I had so much fun making that video, and that's, at the end of the day, that's why, I don't have like plans of like, oh, I want to quit my job and do YouTube full time. So for me, it's all for fun, But like another example is like I did a whole the first big retrospective episode I ever did was about the Streets of Rage series on the Genesis. And it was like a 15-minute video, which at the time was like the longest one I ever made, and I put all this work into it. Right. And it just never took off. Like even to this day, it doesn't have that many views. It's a lot different than my later retrospective videos. I didn't have that cool first part where it was like, me going through all the history and all that stuff. And I don't know if it never took off just because there's already so much Streets of Rage content on YouTube, But sure. It goes like what you're saying. Like when I made that video, I really thought this is going to be like a breakthrough video, and this is going to really go places, and it never did. And like when I did the Genesis launch video, I didn't really think it was going to be that big of a deal. Because who goes on YouTube and types in like Sega Genesis launch? Probably nobody. And so I figured nobody's ever going to see this video. I just want to make it because it's going to be cool. And then it ended up being really popular. So that kind of helped dictate like, oh, okay, you guys like these kind of videos? Well, I like making those kinds, so I'll just make those instead, But you just, like you said, you never know what people are going to like. And I'd say when you're a YouTube content creator, you're lucky when you learn what your audience likes, and that dovetails with what you like to make. So, and that's actually kind of one of the things I was thinking about when I said the thing about when a YouTube channel jumps the shark is and again, I'm not going to be specific, but like there's a certain now popular YouTuber that I subscribed to back when like nobody really knew who he was, and he was just like this goofy guy that I just sort of like, he was kind of on the same wavelength as me, and we had like similar tastes in games, and I just liked his channel. I used to watch all of his videos, and he decided he wanted to do YouTube full time, I guess, and he started making videos specifically that would get lots of views, that were going to pop up in people's searches and whatnot, and that's his bread and butter now. And sometimes the quality suffers, or I think, you know, he'll get criticized in the forums for saying things that aren't true or whatever, and it's just like, I don't think he's doing it because he likes it anymore. You know, it's no longer him putting himself into these videos. It's like, well, what videos do I need to make to get as many clicks as possible? Because now this is my job, you know? Like, you can say he's a sellout or whatever, but it's like, well, it's his job. And it's like, if he doesn't do that, and he says, well, nobody's going to want to watch this video that's like a retrospective of like Bible adventure games, but I really want to make that video, and then nobody watches it, then it's like, I kind of cringe, you know?
Yeah.
And like the video game historian is another example. Like, I know that's his full-time job, and he's made a few videos that haven't gotten as many views as his more popular videos, and whenever I see that, it kind of makes me, even though I don't know the guy, he's not like my friend, I don't know him at all, but when I see that, I kind of worry. It's like, this is like your job, and when you make that video and it doesn't go well, I just kind of worry for the guy. But then at the same time, I don't like it when YouTube channels make videos specifically to get clicks, so I guess it makes me a hypocrite. But
yeah, that's a big one. I think that a person who is on YouTube who wound up making it become their career or whatever, you know, if they're making decent money just by people watching their videos and clicking on ads and things like that, I mean, they got to remember what brought them to that point. They got to remember what exactly it was that made people interested to begin with. Because I'm not going to, you know, I'm not throwing out names either, but I definitely know a few YouTube channels where I'm just like, wow, I miss, you know, 3 years ago, because then they were coming up with creative ideas. They were doing more videos that were just like drastically different, where they were running, you know, kind of going on site and doing things at game shops, or they were doing like these silly little backstage like sketches and stuff or whatever that were just comical, you know, side things. And now they're just sitting there holding up a cartridge saying, well, Shaq Fu came out in 1990. You know, like, I get it. You need to get through it because you need to get through it, but there's no emotion left. You don't care about this anymore. I think that they need to remember that their creativity is what got them to the point of where they are now, and they should just, I mean, even if it isn't going to be something that's going to get a ton of hits because it's some really obscure game or it's some weird idea that you came up with, like, if you're going to do it where it's your job, you should still do those types of videos and just mix them in. Make it so that if you're going to do a review or if you're going to do a reaction video, Shenmue 3 just got Kickstarted, like, oh, we have to do that video because everyone else is. Well, that's great, do that, but just keep working on your side projects too. Do the fun ones, because those are what that's what everyone loves. And it's the consistent, like, hardcore nerdy fans that get you those 300 to 1,000 views. You know, it's not the 60,000 views that you're used to getting every week, but it's the ones that tune in every single week to make sure that you know, and they're the ones that always leave the comments too, like, oh, I love this video and I love that, so that you'll consistently do those types of videos. And it is hard, because I know I'd probably do the same thing if I was making a paycheck. And man, I mean, editing videos could be 60 to 100 hours a week if you were doing it, like trying to do 3 videos a week. You're winding up you're editing for like 8 hours for 20 minutes, you know, easily. I mean, if you're doing some of the more like what I would consider better quality videos, like probably what you do, or GameStack, or even like Johnny Millennium and those types of videos, in my opinion. That and also like a lot of those guys jumping on that whole Patreon bandwagon, where everybody had the Patreon things, where it's like, yeah, if you want us to do more videos, support us on Patreon. And I haven't yet, and I not that I don't think someone deserves it, because I definitely would pay money to someone that was specifically like catering to what I wanted. Like, if it was one of those types of things, I just haven't done anything like that yet. Not that I would do one saying people pay me to make videos. I mean, like, when someone has made a video specifically saying, hey, come in, you know, give us $5 a month so that we can keep, you know, making these videos and whatever. It seems like it's a cool idea, but I was always under the impression that YouTube pays people already, and you kind of get paid for advertisement clicks and for views and things like that. So I have no clue
Yeah,
what
I
it.
mean, you have to be really successful on YouTube to be able to live off of the advertising fees, you know? So
Sure.
I guess I'm not like anti Patreon, you know, because I know I kind of made a face when you said that because I really feel like it's overused and there's people that are asking for Patreon money that really have no business asking. But if there's people
Yeah.
out there that give them the money, then hey, great. Um, like for me, I'll just say it right now, and if I ever do, then somebody can bring this video up. I will never ask for Patreon money, and the reason for that is just that I don't ever want to do anything creative because I feel like I have to. Like if I don't want to upload a video, I'm not going to upload a video. Like I'm not going to make a half-assed video because I've got some sort of like tacit agreement with my audience that I'm going to upload a video so often. And like an example of that is just to go back. I'm not trying to pick on the guy because I'm actually defending him, but the video game historian, like when he announced I'm going to do YouTube full time and I'm going to start taking Patreon money, he did, and then I feel like it was the first video that he was working on some big video, and I forgot what it was, but it was like, you know, and it was a really good video, but it was taking him a while. And so as sort of like a stopgap measure, he released this video, and it was about that Sharp NES TV. That was the Sharp TV with the NES built in. And
Yep.
it was a good video, but it was like a week late coming out, and he releases it, and like the top comment on the video is somebody saying like, you know, this is what we get. Like he's doing YouTube full time, and we're giving him Patreon money, and we get like the Sharp NES TV, and it's just for
That's
that.
so weird.
Yeah, but that's the attitude of a lot of people is like, well, I'm paying you, so I'm like a customer, and you now are obligated to give me what I want when I want it, and that's why I wouldn't take the money. I don't ever want to do YouTube full time, is because for me it's a creative thing, and I don't ever want it to be more than that. And like the fact that I make a little bit of money, and it is a little bit of money, is kind of nice, but I don't actually care. And
Yeah.
just like, of course, it's nice to see my subscriber numbers go up, which they've gone up a lot in the last few months for reasons that I don't really understand. I don't know. It just like happened on its own, and like it's nice, but it's like I have like what, like 3,400 subscribers. Like that's honestly more subscribers than I ever expected to have. Like way more. And if I never had any more subscribers, I would want to keep making videos just for those guys. You know, like that's how big of an audience do you need? It's like that's enough for me where if I make videos and I have people watching them and commenting on them and saying that they like them, and what I like more when people watch a video and then that makes them want to tell me their story. You know, like, oh yeah, I got this console when I was a kid, and they want to tell me some stuff. It's like that's what to me is really cool, you know. So like that, for me, that's like what it's all about. And so like I don't want it to be all about like money or anybody feeling obligated to do anything. And so like that for me is kind of like why I don't like Patreon, is because it turns what was supposed to be something creative into like an enterprise, and those two things don't often go well together.
Yep. You'd almost need like a staff of like writers to like, not to say that anyone could afford that just on, you know, whatever you would make a living on using Patreon or YouTube or whatever, but like you'd almost want like an entire group of people so that you yourself or you and your team of people, like your small whatever, if you have more than one or two people on your group doing videos for YouTube, because eventually, yeah, doing it one a week, you're just at the point where you have no clue of how you're going to make one.
Yeah.
That week, just because you have no topic that you're interested in, and maybe you're just wanting to do something else. And if you don't, exactly that first comment, like, we waited 2 weeks for this, like, shut up, like, why? That is so odd to do that. But are you the type of YouTube person that reads through all of your comments?
Yeah, I absolutely, I read every single comment that anybody has ever left on my channel, and I always try to respond to all of them, even if it's just like just to say, hey, thanks for watching my video, you know.
That's awesome.
Honestly, like that's even kind of my catchphrase if somebody says something negative, because I've had they're not trolls, but I've just had people that are like know-it-alls, or they want to try to correct my grammar, or they want to, well, you shouldn't have said that. Like somebody wanted to argue because I said some game wasn't objectively a good game, and they wanted to argue, well, you can't say a game is objectively good because that by its nature is a subjective thing, and it's just like, it's not that I don't understand what the person is saying, but it's just like they want to get into this whole dialogue with me about, and it's just like, I'm sorry, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I can't remember.
It's really weird.
I can't remember what it was, but it was just last week that somebody was kind of arguing with me about something, and I just didn't want to do it anymore, And it was Street Fighter. Some people say that Street Fighter 2 for the PC Engine is like the best home version of Street Fighter 2, And so I just made some comment about how, well, some people say that's the, and he wanted to get into this big argument about it, and I kept telling him, like, I don't want to argue with you, but, and I just didn't want to get into it with the guy anymore, So,
right.
So with people like that, I'll just say, hey, thanks for watching, even though they were trying to argue with me. It's like, okay, thanks for watching, because that's my way of just, saying,
yeah.
Alrighty then, like, I don't want to, but, but yeah, I mean, I read all the comments, but that's easy for me to do because it's not like I get that many comments, So when it's like a big, I'm sure I seriously doubt that like GameSack reads all their comments, because they can upload a video and within like 10 minutes have like 100 comments. So it's like,
right.
It almost becomes like you'd have to budget your time. Okay, well, 2 hours a day, I'm just going to read comments, and so you can't really, you can't
That'd be really tough.
It's one of the things where like I wouldn't want my channel to get that big to where I couldn't really personally interact with people anymore. I think that would be that would feel kind of crappy for me.
Yeah, totally. I probably get like a comment a month, so I read every single one of my comments too. It's interesting because a lot of the videos that I've done, the most popular ones are the ones that I did in like 2007. The most popular video that I have was one where I was showing people how you can play Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on the GameCube. Yes, the GameCube, with 4 players all using Wavebirds. Because you had to use, I don't know if you remember that game at all. It was a multiplayer game, sort of like Diablo, like 3/4 view, and you had a bunch of characters on the screen. But the only way to play multiplayer is you had to use Game Boy Advances. You had to use GBAs. You had to hook them up with the hookup cables going into the GameCube and use that as your controllers. Because there was some options that were on screen that you'd have to do on your Game Boy, and then like items, menus, and things like that. Because the game is supposed to be like live. You can't pause it, so you're in the middle of a battle and you want to use an item, you have to go to your menu real quick and select it and then go on, and the battle's going on while you're doing that on your Game Boy. It's actually a nice, cool concept. And I really like the game too. So a lot of people were freaking out because you had to use Game Boy Advances, and how many people have 4 Game Boy Advances in their home, so they have to find friends that do that and whatever, and it was like a big pain in the ass. So I put up a video of a way that you could do it just using Wavebirds, playing multiplayer. It's really funny because I don't know. I thought it was witty because in my video it shows that you need 5 televisions and 5 GameCubes. Yeah, it's weird. You had to have 5 TVs, 5 GameCubes, and then 4 of them had to have Game Boy players. So you're basically effectively turning your GameCubes into Game Boy Advances.
Yeah.
So you have all the TV set up. I had a big screen TV, like a 48-inch whatever, in 2007. So it was a big tube TV or whatever, or a rear projection HD TV, which is like 480 or whatever. And then I had 4 CRTs, little CRTs, and then 4 GameCubes. They weren't all mine; they were my buddies. But I came up with this idea that was obviously hundreds of times more expensive than just having Game Boy Advances. And then we were all sitting on a couch, all the way back with Wavebirds or regular GameCube controllers, and we were playing it. And I was like, "Here's how you do it." And then I showed the whole thing, and every single one of the comments are like, "This is the stupidest thing in the world. You're a moron. You're an idiot." But it had like 60,000 views in a year or whatever, or less than that. So it was really popular and really funny. And I think it was even featured on a couple like Japanese websites. I think someone linked it, and that was when I used to really care about those things. I was checking out where all the clicks were coming from to that video, and it was like a Japanese website that was all in Japanese. I couldn't understand it, but then I had a link to my video, and it said when I went it through Google Translate or whatever it was at the time, Yahoo Translate or whatever, and it just talked about like, contrary to popular belief, you can actually use, it was so stupid. But I think that's still like my most popular video, and that was one that I literally did in one take. I just held up my camera and talked to people and showed whatever, and then I paused it and took the SD card out, put it in a computer, and uploaded it. And that was the whole video. And that's my most popular video, probably because it was more of like a how-to, but even though it was a joke how-to.
People like how-tos.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Those are good ones to click on too.
But who would comment on that and tell you you're stupid? That disappoints me.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but didn't somebody? Maybe I'm making this up, but I could have sworn on your Neo Geo CD loading time video that somebody made some kind of comment about like, well, like.
Oh God,
we're exaggerating. It's like, no, you can't actually go to the store and buy cereal and come home to it still loading. Like that's exaggerating for comedic effect.
Yes. There was a couple comments about that saying that this is very, very inaccurate and this is just totally exaggerated. And I thought it was actually going to be about the load times or whatever. And maybe it was my mistake too. I wound up actually starting a thread on NeoGeo.com, I think, in their general discussion or whatever, and I said, hey, I did this video on like Neo Geo CD load times, and check it out. If you think it's funny, let me know or whatever. And then a whole bunch of comments below that were just like, this is the dumbest thing ever, and like all these things about how stupid it was, and that's, I guess, what I was expecting anyway. But there was still a couple people who thought it was funny. I got a couple of LOLs, so that's all that mattered. And I think that video actually did okay in comparison to some of my other ones, a couple hundred views. It was pretty cool, and I think I got a lot of messages that a lot of people liked it.
Yeah.
I got a few subscribers from that video too. Just people that subscribed to me and said, do more videos like the Neo Geo one, because that was a lot of fun. And I'm like,
I liked
that.
it.
I think it was fun too, and I'm really happy with the way it came out. But that took me like a day. Like I had the first time in I don't know how long, and it hasn't happened since, just a full day where I was by myself. It was the weirdest thing. Like all of my kids were off at different events and different activities doing stuff. My wife and my youngest son were off at their parents' house for this, like, I think they were canning, like, I don't know if you can where you're from, but like if you have a garden of tomatoes, you can't eat them all. So at the end of the harvest, you like can them all. You make tomato soup or spaghetti sauce and things like that. And it was a whole day. And they're like, do you want to come with? And I'm like, actually, no, I'm going to stay home. And I just got up that morning and I'm like, I'm going to do this crazy, stupid video. And that day, I actually did 2 videos. I did it, got up at like 8 in the morning and worked on those videos until like 6 or 7 at night. But I did that, the Neo Geo load time ones, and I did the, I don't know if you've watched it. It's really stupid, but I thought it was funny. It's the Jean-Claude Van Damme visits me in my game room video.
I did watch that one.
I did those in the same day. So like that was fun. I would love to have more days like that and do more videos like that, but it doesn't happen very often. I don't know.
It's funny what you said about the Neo Geo forums, because I love the Neo Geo forums. I've been a member.
I do too.
I probably have more. There's more people on the Neo Geo forums who are my friends, like either in real life or just people I would consider really good online friends, than in any forums I've ever been in. But it took me at least 2 years before I would post one of my YouTube videos, because I knew they were going to rip me a new. In fact, the only reason I posted anything is because somebody who was like a notorious figure on the forums, just for being a notorious idiot, posted on one of my videos, and I just thought that was hilarious. Like, oh, this guy found me, and so only because of that did I go to the Neo Geo forums and say, hey, this so and so posted on one of my videos, and like that's how they found out I had a YouTube channel.
That's funny.
Because I don't want to, I don't want to deal with the grief that they're going to give me, which they should. Yeah. I would do the same thing back to any of them. That's what those forums are all about. So I'm not surprised that they all told you that your video was stupid, because it wouldn't matter who you are. That's just what they do. It's all in good fun.
That's exactly how I look at it too. It's always just silly. It's just it's just getting ribbed, for whatever reason, just because it's the entertaining thing to do that day. or whatever. But I've never taken anything personally. And I've actually, this December, I'm going to be a member of that forums for like 10 years. Even though I haven't posted nearly as much as I probably should. I've lurked. I've always gone through like the buy, sell, trade things probably once every week or every other week. I always check those things. But being on the Neo forums for a while now, and I've been in a few conversations just on the forums or whatever, back and forth. And I've had a lot of really good trades on the forums, buying, selling, and trading on Neo Geo especially. And I love the feedback, the whole way that it calculates all that and stuff for you on your account, so you can see if someone's trying to sell something and they have a poor score, you know, right away to say, well, you can send it first and then I'll pay for it, or vice versa, whatever.
Yeah.
Pay for it first and then I'll send it, type things. Because I don't want to completely like rule someone out, because you never know when something might just be a nasty transaction where someone got something in the mail and they're like, well, I'm not going to replace it. And, you know, who knows, you're untrustworthy or whatever. But I've had really good experiences on NeoGeo.com the whole time I've been there. And it's interesting because they always have that like tagline where it says, you know, come for whatever and stay for the drama or whatever. Because there's like a lot of people who haven't been able to stay around there, or like got banned or got deleted their own account just because it's so much drama and so much arguing that goes on there. And I've never seen that. And I would actually say that like on the PC Engine FX forums, I personally think there's more drama and more arguing that's more petty and stuff that's just not so much now. I think it's I can kind of take a step back and just say like, oh, well, this is just because this person's an idiot, or this user is always in fights with people, or this person's just a troll, period. But like back in the day, there was a lot of shit that was going on in those forums, and it's just like it was a headache. It was just like I put a for sale, you know, thread up, and you're telling me whatever random shit about my you know, your dad's whatever, you know, like, why are you doing this? Whereas like on Neo, it was like I never saw any of that, and I really kind of defended it when people would say it was too dramatic, and I'm like, this is nothing compared to what PCFX can be like. So
yeah, they just have a different tone. I mean, I like them both. I just think the PC Engine forums are the least moderated forums that I ever go to, you know. And they have like moderators, but it's just like they don't really. It's just the tone. It's like, I'm not saying the moderators don't do anything. It's just like that's just the way it is there. It's like it's more of a free for all. Yep. And even the Neo Geo forums are more notorious for all the drama and everything else that goes on. It's not hard to get banned from those forums, or at least get locked in the war room, or like have your sale thread closed because you're being an idiot. And so it's just got a different flavor to it. But I also think that 99% of the fun stirring that goes on in the Neo Geo forums is really at the end of the day just, you know, having fun.
Yep.
And not like you really hate that person in real life, you know. But I think on the PC Engine forums, there's a few people that if they got together in real life, it might kind of get ugly. So
that's very true. Yeah, it's interesting to see when some people like really make nasty threats at each other, and it's like, God, we are here on the most obscure little forum in the world where you guys have so many similar interests, and you're gonna sit here and call someone this name, or you're gonna sit here and throw a fit about it. Like, who cares, you know? I mean, at the end of the day, you can disagree with them and you can not like them, but why get personal? Why go crazy on this stuff? And it's just, it is a little weird. I love PCEngineFX.com too. I think it's like the best place in the world. If you can get past the idea that it's not as moderated as some are. We do have a moderator. I mean, there, you know, like you said, there's a couple, and the one who's the most active right now does a really good job of everything. But I think that, you know, the guys in that are the more like longtime members kind of police themselves, and if somebody comes in and they're rubbing people the wrong way right away, they'll hear about it instantly and then probably disappear because they can get kind of mean to them. But it's always been a great forum and a great place. It's definitely had its dramatic times and personally I don't know why someone would make a joke saying, well, if you think it's bad here, try Neo, and it's like, actually Neo they're very helpful as well. It's not. You just got to not be an idiot, and you'll fit in just fine.
Yep. You can say the same thing about both places.
Yeah. I mean, at least it's not Digit Press. That place is a shithole. No, I'm kidding. But, so, okay. Is there anything else that you can think about that you'd like to chat about tonight, or are we getting close to closing time?
Yeah, I think I've run through everything I had in my head for this evening.
I think so too, and then some. So, okay, awesome. I'm really happy with this. Other than the technical difficulties at the beginning, I hope it didn't like completely destroy this video. But what I'm already thinking about doing too is for what we did discuss at the beginning, I think we kind of looped around and kind of talked about it again, or else at least alluded to it again. Some of the things that we chatted about at the beginning. And if it's really bad, if my audio is just screwed up from the get-go, I'm probably going to just re-edit this video and cut some of that out. And then try to get it re-uploaded as a better version of this. But otherwise, I'm sure it's 2.5 hours already. That there's some good content for people to listen to. But anyway, I've seen more viewers tonight than I've done on the last Wednesday. So that's a big step. That there's more people in and out from when we started this to now. And that's really cool to see. And I thank everyone so much for coming out and checking out this little live stream that we did today. Not 100% sure if everybody was in love with it or not. You can let us know in the comments below. Absolutely follow Chris at his Classic Gaming Quarterly. His YouTube channel link will be in the description here. It's an absolutely fantastic channel, and I thank you so much for being a part of the show tonight, Chris. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. I was really surprised that anybody would ask me to be on a show. So I was really excited about this, and thanks a lot again for having me. And I don't have the YouTube thing in front of me, so I can't see if there how many viewers there were or the comments, but I'll absolutely go through the comments after we're done here and respond to any that I can, if there was anything that was sort of aimed my way or anything. And I'd love to be on with you any other time.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, awesome. Thanks again, and until next time, we'll probably wind up doing more of these weekend shows. I know that a few people that have been interested in being on have talked about rather doing weekends as opposed to weekday nights, so that is open to me as well. Honestly, these late night shows are kind of fun to do anyway. We'll wind up probably being back again next Saturday, and also our Wednesday night for Hump Game. Wait, that's not what it's called. It's called Game Hump for Wednesday nights as well. So until then, and also I'll have a Till I Die video for Volgar the Viking for the Dreamcast, which is a lot of fun. And you guys can check that out too on this same YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much for watching, and everybody, good night. Indeed.